Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to discover you're not the only you anymore. Overnight, a perfect quantum copy of your consciousness has been created, identical down to every memory, thought, and emotion up until this very moment. As you open your eyes somewhere across the city, another you is doing exactly the same thing, believing with absolute certainty that they are the original you. Here's the mind-bending part. From this moment forward, both versions of you will swear they are the real, original consciousness that has existed all along. Both will have the exact same memories of childhood, the same emotional attachments, and the same conviction that they are the real you. Yet only one of you inhabited your body yesterday, or did you? This is just the beginning of our journey into the deepest, most unsettling paradoxes that will forever change how you think about reality, consciousness, and your very existence. These aren't just clever puzzles or philosophical thought experiments. These are the kind of paradoxes that burrow into your mind and refuse to leave, fundamentally altering how you perceive everything around you. In the next 3 hours, we'll explore paradoxes that challenge the very foundations of what you consider real. We'll meet Dr. Elena Vasiliev, a quantum physicist at the Advanced Consciousness Research Institute, who accidentally created the first human consciousness copy while attempting to map neural patterns. We'll delve into the case of Marcus Chen, whose participation in the consciousness copying experiment led to both versions of him claiming to be the original, each with equally valid memories and emotional connections to their family. But the consciousness copy paradox is just our first step into the rabbit hole. What if I told you that the very act of you reading these words right now might be creating infinite parallel versions of your consciousness, each one believing they are the only real you? What if the simple decision to continue reading has already split your consciousness into countless branches, each experiencing a slightly different version of this moment? Consider the implications. If a consciousness can be copied perfectly, which version of you is really you? The answer becomes even more disturbing when you realize that both versions would have equal claim to being the original. Each would have the same memories, the same emotional connections, the same sense of continuous existence from their earliest memories right up to the moment of copying. There would be no way, even in principle, to determine which was the original consciousness. Dr. Vasiliev's experiment revealed something even more unsettling. When both versions of Marcus Chen were interviewed separately, they gave identical accounts of their lives, finished each other's sentences, and even shared the same private thoughts they'd never told anyone. Yet, from the moment of separation, they began to diverge, each developing distinct experiences and memories while maintaining their conviction of being the original Marcus. This paradox forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of personal identity. What makes you you? Is it your memories, your continuous stream of consciousness, your physical brain? The paradox suggests that none of these answers are satisfactory. If a perfect copy of your consciousness exists, both versions would have equal claim to all these aspects of identity. The implications ripple out even further. If consciousness can be copied, does that mean our sense of being a single, continuous self is merely an illusion? Are we perhaps already existing in multiple forms, each convinced of their uniqueness? The more you think about it, the more you realize this paradox doesn't just question who we are. It challenges the very notion of having a single, definitive identity. As we venture deeper into our exploration of reality-bending paradoxes, remember, the consciousness copy paradox is just the beginning. Each paradox we encounter will build upon the last, creating a web of interconnected realizations that will permanently alter how you understand existence. Once you grasp these concepts, there's no going back to your previous way of thinking. Your perception of reality will be forever changed. Are you ready to begin this journey? To venture into territories of thought that will challenge everything you believe about consciousness, reality, and your own existence. Remember, once you understand these paradoxes, you can never unthink them. They become part of how you see the world, permanently altering your perception of reality. Let's dive in. The story of how Dr. Vasiliev stumbled upon the consciousness copying phenomenon begins at the quantum level, where reality itself becomes fuzzy and uncertain. At the Advanced Consciousness Research Institute's quantum computing facility in Geneva, she had been working on mapping neural patterns using quantum entanglement, a process that allowed her team to observe brain activity at unprecedented levels of detail. But what they discovered went far beyond simple neural mapping. Late one night in December 2024, while running what seemed like routine quantum scans of volunteer Marcus Chen's brain patterns, Dr. Vasiliev noticed something extraordinary. The quantum states of Marcus's neural networks weren't just being observed. They were being perfectly replicated in the quantum computer's matrix. At first, she assumed this was a glitch in the system, but further investigation revealed something far more profound. The quantum computer wasn't just copying neural patterns, it was replicating consciousness itself. The implications were staggering. When they activated the quantum matrix containing the copied consciousness patterns, it didn't just simulate Marcus's brain activity. It became a fully conscious entity, complete with all of Marcus's memories, personality traits, and sense of self. This wasn't artificial intelligence mimicking human consciousness. It was an exact quantum duplicate of a human mind. But here's where the paradox deepens. The quantum copy didn't behave like a copy at all. From its perspective, it had lived Marcus's entire life up until that moment. It had the same childhood memories, the same emotional attachments to family and friends, the same private thoughts and secret desires. Most importantly, it had the same unshakable conviction that it was the original Marcus Chen. Dr. Sarah Hammond, the Institute's lead philosopher and ethicist, immediately recognized the profound implications. We're not just dealing with a technological breakthrough, she explained to the Emergency Ethics Committee. We're facing a fundamental challenge to our understanding of personal identity and consciousness continuity. If two versions of the same consciousness exist, both with equal claim to being the original, then what does that tell us about the nature of self? The paradox became even more complex when they discovered that the quantum copying process wasn't just creating duplicates. It was creating what Dr. Vasiliev called quantum entangled consciousness. The two versions of Marcus remained subtly connected at the quantum level, occasionally experiencing shared thoughts or simultaneous insights, despite being physically separated. This quantum entanglement of consciousness raised even more disturbing questions. If two conscious minds can remain quantumly entangled, what does that mean for our assumption of having a single, unified consciousness? Could our normal, everyday experience of being a single conscious entity be masking a more complex reality where consciousness exists in multiple, interconnected states? Dr. James Whitman, a quantum physicist from the rival Quantum Mind Institute in California, proposed an even more radical interpretation. What if consciousness itself is fundamentally quantum in nature? He suggested. Perhaps what we think of as our single continuous stream of consciousness is actually a constant process of quantum copying and entanglement happening at a scale we can't normally perceive. The research team began conducting more detailed experiments, carefully documenting the experiences of both versions of Marcus. They discovered that while both shared identical memories up to the point of copying, their experiences began diverging immediately afterward. Yet both maintained an equally valid and unshakable sense of being the original, Marcus Chen. This observation led to what Dr. Vasiliev called the consciousness continuity paradox. If consciousness can be perfectly copied, and both copies have an equally valid claim to being the original, then what exactly is continuing from moment to moment in our normal experience of consciousness? Are we the same conscious entity we were yesterday? Or are we actually a new copy with the memories of yesterday's consciousness? The implications extend far beyond the laboratory. If consciousness can be copied at the quantum level, what does this mean for our concepts of personal identity, responsibility, and even legal rights? How do we handle a situation where two versions of the same person exist, each believing they are the original, each with equal claim to the same life, relationships, and possessions? More troubling still, if consciousness copying is possible at the quantum level, could it be happening naturally, without our awareness? Could the quantum nature of consciousness mean that we're constantly splitting into multiple versions of ourselves, each experiencing a slightly different version of reality? The mere possibility forces us to question everything we thought we knew about the nature of individual identity and conscious experience. As these questions began circulating through the scientific community, researchers at other institutions started reporting similar phenomena in their own quantum consciousness experiments. The consciousness copy paradox wasn't just a single anomaly. It appeared to be revealing a fundamental property of consciousness itself, one that challenges our most basic assumptions about what it means to be a single, continuous self. The real crisis emerged 3 months after the initial consciousness copying experiment, when both versions of Marcus Chen began experiencing what Dr. Vasiliev termed quantum consciousness bleed. During routine monitoring sessions, researchers noticed that the neural patterns of both Marcus versions were showing unprecedented levels of quantum entanglement, leading to moments where their conscious experiences would mysteriously overlap. The first incident occurred during a standard follow-up interview. Original Marcus, as the research team labeled him, though he hated the term, suddenly stopped mid-sentence and described in perfect detail what quantum Marcus was doing in a completely different part of the facility. Details he couldn't possibly have known through conventional means. More disturbing still, quantum Marcus simultaneously experienced the same phenomenon in reverse? Dr. Vasiliev's team quickly discovered this wasn't an isolated incident. Both versions of Marcus began reporting increasingly frequent moments of consciousness bleeding, experiencing each other's thoughts, feelings, and immediate sensory perceptions. This raised an even more troubling question. If two versions of the same consciousness can experience this kind of quantum entanglement, where does one consciousness truly end and the other begin? The phenomenon caught the attention of Dr. Rachel Nakamura, a leading expert in quantum mechanics at the Tokyo Institute of Advanced Physics. What we're seeing here, she explained during an emergency conference call with the research team, isn't just a copy of consciousness, it's a fundamental split in the fabric of conscious experience itself. The quantum entanglement between the two versions suggests that consciousness might exist in a quantum superposition state, only collapsing into distinct experiences when observed. This interpretation introduced an even more mind-bending possibility. What if our normal experience of having a single, unified consciousness is actually an illusion? What if consciousness naturally exists in multiple entangled states, and our perception of being a single, continuous self is merely the result of our inability to perceive these quantum states? The crisis deepened when both versions of Marcus began experiencing what they called consciousness echoes, moments where they couldn't distinguish which memories belonged to which version of themselves. Dr. Hammond's ethics team faced an unprecedented dilemma. If both versions of Marcus were experiencing increasingly intermingled consciousness, how could they maintain separate identities? More importantly, should they even try? Adding to the complexity, Dr. Whitman's team at the Quantum Mind Institute made a startling discovery. When they attempted to replicate Dr. Vasiliev's experiment with different volunteers, they found that the quantum consciousness copying process didn't always create perfect duplicates. Sometimes, the copied consciousness would manifest slight variations, different emotional responses, altered memory interpretations, or subtle personality shifts. This suggested that consciousness might be even more quantum in nature than initially thought, with each copy representing a different, possible quantum state of the same fundamental consciousness. The implications became even more unsettling when Marcus's wife, Dr. Lisa Chen, a neuroscientist herself, reported that both versions of her husband seemed to be simultaneously right and wrong about shared memories of their life together. It's as if they're both remembering different versions of the same events, she explained to the research team. And the strangest part is, sometimes their conflicting memories both feel true to me, as if they're remembering different branches of reality that somehow both actually happened. This observation led Dr. Vasiliev to propose what she called the quantum memory paradox, the idea that our memories might not be fixed records of past events, but rather quantum superpositions of multiple possible pasts that only collapse into specific versions when we attempt to recall them. This would explain why both versions of Marcus could have equally valid but slightly different memories of the same events. The situation reached a critical point when both versions of Marcus began experiencing what they described as consciousness fracturing, moments where they felt their sense of self splitting into even more versions, as if the initial copying had triggered a cascade of quantum consciousness divisions. This raised the terrifying possibility that consciousness copying might not be a single event, but rather the beginning of an ongoing process of quantum consciousness multiplication. Preparing and narrating this theory took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the theory. Dr. Hammond's team faced an impossible ethical question. If consciousness naturally exists in multiple quantum states, do we have a responsibility to maintain the illusion of singular consciousness? Or should we be helping people become aware of and navigate their potentially multiple conscious states? The implications for human identity, society, and our understanding of reality itself were staggering. Furthermore, the research raised disturbing questions about the nature of death and consciousness continuity. If consciousness can be copied and exists in quantum superposition states, what happens when one version of a consciousness ceases to exist? Does the quantum entanglement between versions mean that some aspect of consciousness persists as long as any version remains? The philosophical and existential implications seemed endless, each answer only leading to more profound and unsettling questions. The roots of the consciousness copying phenomenon stretch back further than anyone initially realized. In 1967, at the height of the Cold War, a classified Soviet research program, codenamed Project Mirror, had stumbled upon something inexplicable. Dr. Nikolai Volkov, working in a secret facility outside Moscow, had been conducting experiments on quantum entanglement when his equipment detected what he called consciousness echoes, mysterious patterns that seemed to suggest consciousness existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. The Soviet authorities, failing to grasp the implications of Volkov's discovery, eventually shut down the project. Volkov's research notes, recently uncovered in the Russian state archives by Dr. Vasilyev's team, revealed eerily similar patterns to those observed in the Marcus Chen experiment. But Volkov had lacked the quantum computing technology necessary to fully investigate what he'd found. Decades later, in 1994, theoretical physicist Dr. Maria Santos at the University of Barcelona proposed what she called the quantum consciousness framework. Her mathematical models suggested that consciousness might not be confined to classical physics, but could operate on a quantum level, potentially existing in multiple states simultaneously. At the time, her work was dismissed as purely theoretical. There was no way to test her hypotheses with the technology available. Dr. Santos had collaborated briefly with a brilliant but controversial researcher, Dr. Thomas Blackwood at Oxford University. Together, they developed the multiple consciousness theorem, which proposed that what we experience as a single stream of consciousness might actually be the result of countless quantum consciousness states, constantly interacting and collapsing into observable experiences. The implications were too radical for the scientific community to accept, recalled Dr. Blackwood, now in his 80s and serving as a consultant to Dr. Vasilyev's team. We were suggesting that the very nature of human consciousness was fundamentally different from what everyone believed. Nobody was ready to consider that their sense of being a single, unified self might be an illusion. The breakthrough came in 2019 when Dr. Yuki Tanaka at the Tokyo Quantum Research Center developed the first quantum neural interface, a device capable of reading and writing quantum states in organic neural tissue. Although designed for medical applications, Tanaka's invention laid the groundwork for the technology that would eventually enable consciousness copying. But it was Dr. Amanda Foster's work at MIT in 2022 that provided the crucial missing piece. Her research on quantum information preservation in biological systems demonstrated that human consciousness might naturally exist in a state of quantum superposition. She discovered that neural networks could maintain quantum coherence for much longer than previously thought possible, suggesting that quantum effects might play a crucial role in consciousness. "We were all working with pieces of the same puzzle," explained Dr. Foster during a recent interview at the Advanced Consciousness Research Institute. Volkov had seen the echoes of quantum consciousness. Santos and Blackwood had developed the theoretical framework. Tanaka had created the interface technology. And my work showed how it could all be biologically possible. But nobody had put it all together until Dr. Vasilyev's team accidentally created the first consciousness copy. The historical context revealed something even more intriguing. Throughout human history, there had been scattered reports of what we would now recognize as consciousness bleeding, cases where individuals reported experiencing multiple simultaneous streams of consciousness or sharing conscious experiences with others. These accounts had been dismissed as mystical experiences, psychiatric conditions, or simple fabrications. Dr. Mei Wang, a medical historian at Hong Kong University, had compiled an extensive database of these historical cases. "What's fascinating," she noted, "is how consistently these experiences align with what we're now observing in the laboratory. People throughout history have reported phenomena remarkably similar to what both versions of Marcus Chen are experiencing. We just didn't have the scientific framework to understand what they were describing." Perhaps most intriguing were the parallels with ancient philosophical concepts. The Buddhist notion of non-self, anatta, and certain Hindu philosophical concepts about the nature of consciousness seemed to anticipate aspects of what the quantum consciousness research was revealing. These traditions had long suggested that our ordinary sense of being a single, unified self might be an illusion, a perspective that aligned surprisingly well with the implications of consciousness copying. As Dr. Vasilyev's team delved deeper into this historical context, they began to suspect that what they discovered wasn't entirely new. Rather, they had finally developed the technological means to observe and interact with a fundamental aspect of consciousness that humans had been encountering and struggling to understand for millennia. The weight of this historical context added new dimensions to the ethical and philosophical challenges they faced. If consciousness naturally exists in multiple quantum states, had humanity's long-standing assumption of singular consciousness actually been limiting our understanding of ourselves? Were we now on the verge of rediscovering something about the nature of consciousness that ancient cultures had intuited but lacked the scientific means to verify? To understand how consciousness copying actually works, we need to delve into the quantum mechanics of consciousness itself. Dr. Vasilyev's breakthrough came from recognizing that consciousness doesn't operate like classical computer code. It exists in a state of quantum superposition until the moment of observation or interaction. This quantum state allows for what she termed consciousness wave function collapse, the moment when multiple potential states of consciousness resolve into a single experienced reality. The process begins at the smallest possible scale of neural activity. Using the quantum neural scanner, QNS, developed by Dr. Vasilyev's team, individual neurons are mapped not just in terms of their classical properties, but their quantum states. These quantum states include superpositions of multiple possible neural configurations, all existing simultaneously until they're observed or measured. Think of it like a garden of forking paths, explained Dr. Catherine Reynolds, the team's quantum mechanics specialist. Each quantum state of consciousness contains within it all possible variations of that consciousness at that moment. When we perform the copying process, we're essentially creating a second garden with all the same paths. But from that point forward, both gardens begin growing in their own unique ways. The technical process involves 3 critical stages. First, the QNS creates what Dr. Reynolds calls a quantum consciousness map, a complete recording of all quantum states present in the subject's neural network. This map includes not just the current state of consciousness, but all potential states that could collapse into reality at any moment. The second stage, dubbed quantum state transfer, is where the real complexity begins. Using a network of entangled quantum bits, qubits, in a specialized quantum computer, the team creates an exact replica of the subject's quantum consciousness map. This isn't just a copy of information, it's a perfect duplication of the quantum states themselves, maintaining all their superpositions and potential collapse points. The third and most challenging stage is consciousness actualization. This is where the copied quantum states are instantiated in a new quantum matrix, creating a second conscious entity that is identical to the original, up to the moment of copying. Dr. Vasilyev's team discovered that this process requires what they call quantum consciousness substrate, a specially designed quantum computing environment that can support conscious experience. But here's where things get even stranger. Dr. Arjun Patel, the team's theoretical physicist, discovered that the consciousness copying process isn't as straightforward as making a digital copy. We're not just duplicating information, he explained. We're actually splitting the quantum field of consciousness itself. This means that both versions remain quantum mechanically entangled, even though they begin experiencing separate classical realities. This quantum entanglement explains the consciousness bleeding phenomenon experienced by both versions of Marcus Chen. Because their conscious experiences remain quantum mechanically linked, information can sometimes leak between them through what Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. This creates moments where both versions temporarily share consciousness, experiencing each other's thoughts and perceptions. The team's latest research has revealed something even more mind-bending. They've discovered that the quantum states of consciousness appear to exist in what Dr. Patel calls probability clouds. These clouds contain all possible variations of a person's consciousness at any given moment. When consciousness is copied, both versions inherit these probability clouds, but they collapse into different specific states based on their unique experiences after the split. This suggests that consciousness itself might be fundamentally probabilistic, noted Dr. Yasmin Al-Rashid, the team's quantum biology expert. What we experience as a single continuous stream of consciousness might actually be an ongoing series of quantum collapses, each selecting one possibility from an infinite field of potential conscious states. The implications of this discovery extended far beyond the laboratory. If consciousness naturally exists in probability clouds, then every decision we make, every thought we have, might be creating quantum branches of consciousness that continue to exist in parallel with our experienced reality. The consciousness copying experiment might not be creating something new, but rather making visible a process that happens naturally all the time. Further complicating matters, the team discovered that the quantum entanglement between copied consciousnesses isn't limited to just two versions. When they attempted to create a third copy from either version of Marcus, they found that all three copies became entangled with each other, creating what Dr. Vasiliev called a quantum consciousness network. This raised profound questions about the nature of individual identity. If multiple copies of a consciousness can remain quantum mechanically entangled, sharing information and experiences across what we perceive as separate individuals, then what does it really mean to be a single, unique person? The very concept of individual identity began to seem like an oversimplification of a much more complex quantum reality. The technical challenges of maintaining stable quantum consciousness copies also revealed unexpected insights. The team found that the quantum probability clouds of consciousness seemed to resist certain types of manipulation, as if consciousness itself had inherent quantum mechanical properties that couldn't be altered without destroying the conscious experience entirely. These discoveries led Dr. Vasiliev to propose what she called the quantum consciousness principle, the idea that consciousness is fundamentally a quantum phenomenon that only appears classical and singular due to our limited ability to perceive its true quantum nature. This principle suggested that our entire understanding of human consciousness might need to be reconsidered in light of its quantum properties. The practical implications of consciousness copying began to manifest in unexpected ways throughout society. The first major breakthrough came from Dr. Maya Patel's work with coma patients at New Hope Medical Center. Using a modified version of the quantum consciousness copying technology, her team discovered they could access the quantum consciousness states of patients who appeared completely unresponsive to classical medical measurements. What we found was astonishing, Dr. Patel reported. The consciousness of coma patients wasn't absent. It was existing in a different quantum state that our traditional medical equipment couldn't detect. By creating a partial consciousness copy, we could establish a bridge to these alternative states of awareness. This discovery led to the development of the Quantum Consciousness Bridge, QCB, a device that allowed families to communicate with loved ones previously thought to be completely unconscious. But the implications reached far beyond medical applications. At the Silicon Valley startup Quantum Mind Dynamics, CEO Daniel Park saw the potential for revolutionary changes in human-computer interaction. His team began developing what they called quantum consciousness interfaces, systems that could interact directly with the quantum states of human consciousness. Traditional computer interfaces are like trying to pour water through a pinhole, Park explained. They force our quantum consciousness to collapse into classical interactions, typing, clicking, speaking. but by engaging directly with the quantum states of consciousness, we can access the full spectrum of human thought and experience. The first practical demonstration of this technology came when Sarah Martinez, a paralyzed artist, used a quantum consciousness interface to create art directly from her mental imagery. The system didn't just read her conscious thoughts, it accessed the quantum probability cloud of all possible artistic expressions she was considering simultaneously. The resulting artwork existed in what appeared to be multiple aesthetic states at once, shifting and changing depending on how it was observed. However, these practical applications also revealed new complexities in the consciousness copying phenomenon. Dr. Rebecca Chang at the Institute for Quantum Psychology discovered that quantum consciousness interfaces could sometimes trigger what she termed consciousness resonance, unexpected interactions between the quantum states of different users' consciousness. During a routine test of a quantum consciousness network, we observed something extraordinary, Dr. Chang reported. Two users who had never met began experiencing shared consciousness states. Their quantum probability clouds appeared to synchronize, creating a temporary, merged consciousness that contained elements of both individuals' experiences. This discovery led to both excitement and concern in the scientific community. Dr. Victor Rossi, a quantum ethics researcher at the Rome Institute of Technology, warned about the potential implications of consciousness resonance. "We're dealing with the fundamental fabric of human identity," he cautioned. "If consciousness can be shared, copied, and merged at the quantum level, what does that mean for individual autonomy and privacy?" The military implications also couldn't be ignored. Reports emerged that several governments were exploring the potential of quantum consciousness technology for everything from enhanced battlefield awareness to new forms of intelligence gathering. This prompted Dr. Vasiliev to publish an open letter calling for international regulations on consciousness copying technology. "We're standing at a crossroads," she wrote. "This technology has the potential to revolutionize human experience, but it could also fundamentally disrupt the basis of individual identity and privacy. We need to establish ethical frameworks before these capabilities outpace our ability to manage them responsibly." Meanwhile, philosophers and religious leaders began grappling with the implications of consciousness, copying for concepts of the soul and personal identity. Rabbi David Cohen at the Center for Quantum Theology proposed that quantum consciousness might provide a scientific framework for understanding ancient spiritual concepts about the interconnectedness of human consciousness. "What we're discovering about quantum consciousness echoes what mystics have been saying for millennia," Rabbi Cohen suggested. "The idea that consciousness exists in multiple states simultaneously, that it can be shared and connected across apparent boundaries. These are concepts that appear in many spiritual traditions. The practical implications extended into legal territory as well. Attorney Jennifer Wu at the Digital Rights Foundation began working on what she called quantum consciousness rights, legal frameworks to protect individuals' rights to their own quantum consciousness states. "We need to establish legal precedents," Wu argued. "Who owns a copied consciousness? What rights does a quantum consciousness copy have? These aren't just philosophical questions anymore. They're practical legal issues that need answers. As these practical applications continued to develop, researchers noticed another intriguing phenomenon. Dr. Tanaka's team at the Tokyo Quantum Research Center discovered that quantum consciousness copies seem to maintain certain connections even across significant distances. They termed this effect quantum consciousness entanglement persistence, the tendency of copied consciousness states to remain subtly connected regardless of physical separation. This discovery suggested that consciousness copying might have even more profound implications than initially thought. If quantum consciousness states could remain connected across space and time, it raised the possibility of new forms of human connection and communication that transcended physical limitations. As the implications of quantum consciousness technology began to unfold, researchers started noticing patterns that challenged their initial assumptions. Dr. Isabella Romano, leading the Consciousness Analysis Division at the Advanced Consciousness Research Institute, identified what she called quantum consciousness cascade effects, unexpected ripples in consciousness patterns that seemed to spread beyond the immediate subjects of consciousness copying experiments. The first indication came during a routine follow-up session with Marcus Chen's family members. Dr. Romano's team discovered that people who spent significant time with either version of Marcus began experiencing subtle alterations in their own consciousness patterns. It wasn't just the psychological impact of dealing with two versions of the same person. Their quantum consciousness states were actually being influenced by prolonged exposure to the copied consciousness. It's as if consciousness has a quantum contagion effect, Dr. Romano explained. When multiple consciousness patterns interact regularly, they begin to develop quantum entanglements, creating what we might call consciousness networks. These networks appear to operate independently of physical proximity once established. This discovery led to an even more startling realization. Dr. Benjamin Cohen, a quantum physicist specializing in entanglement theory, detected what he termed retroactive consciousness entanglement. The quantum states of consciousness didn't just influence each other in the present. They seemed to create connections that reached backward and forward in time. We found that when we examined the quantum consciousness patterns of people who had interacted with copied consciousness, there were traces of entanglement that predated the actual copying event, Dr. Cohen reported. It's as if the very act of creating a consciousness copy sends quantum ripples both forward and backward through time, affecting consciousness patterns before the copy even existed. The implications were mind-bending. If consciousness copying could create quantum entanglements that transcended normal temporal boundaries, what did that mean for our understanding of cause and effect? Dr. Lucia Fernandez, a theoretical physicist at the Barcelona Quantum Center, proposed that consciousness might exist in what she called a quantum temporal superposition, a state where past, present, and future consciousness states exist simultaneously at the quantum level. Further analysis revealed another layer of complexity. Dr. Aisha Rahman, leading the quantum psychology department at Oxford, discovered what she called consciousness harmonic resonance. When multiple copied consciousness patterns interacted, they didn't just influence each other randomly. They created complex patterns of interference and reinforcement, like waves intersecting in a pond. These consciousness harmonics appear to follow mathematical patterns similar to music theory, Dr. Raman explained. It's as if different consciousness patterns can create either dissonance or harmony when they interact, leading to either strengthened or weakened quantum entanglements. This observation led to a breakthrough in understanding why some consciousness copies maintain stronger connections than others. Dr. Kevin O'Brien, a quantum mathematician, developed what he called the Consciousness Harmony Index, a mathematical model for predicting how different consciousness patterns would interact when copied or exposed to copied consciousness. What we're seeing isn't just random quantum interaction, Dr. O'Brien argued. There's an underlying mathematical structure to consciousness itself. When we copy consciousness, we're not just duplicating information. We're creating new nodes in an incredibly complex quantum network of consciousness that appears to span both space and time. The analysis also revealed unexpected psychological effects. Dr. Sophie Laurent, a quantum psychologist at the Paris Institute of Consciousness Studies, documented what she called quantum consciousness bleed-through, subtle transfers of memories, emotions, and even personality traits between people who had been exposed to copied consciousness. It's not as dramatic as the direct consciousness bleeding we see between copied consciousnesses, Dr. Laurent noted, but people who spend significant time around copied consciousness begin to experience what we might call quantum consciousness osmosis. They start picking up traces of memories or emotional patterns that aren't their own. This discovery raised new ethical concerns. If exposure to copied consciousness could inadvertently alter someone's own consciousness patterns, what were the implications for consent and personal autonomy? Dr. Maria Gonzalez, head of the Global Ethics Committee for Quantum Technologies, began advocating for strict protocols regarding exposure to copied consciousness. We need to understand that we're not just dealing with a new technology, Dr. Gonzalez warned. We're potentially altering the fundamental nature of human consciousness itself. Every interaction with copied consciousness could be creating quantum entanglements that permanently affect everyone involved. The analysis also revealed an unexpected phenomenon that Dr. Romano called quantum consciousness amplification. When multiple consciousness copies existed in close proximity, they seemed to strengthen certain aspects of their shared consciousness patterns, creating what she described as islands of heightened quantum coherence in the overall field of consciousness. These findings suggested that consciousness copying wasn't just creating duplicate versions of individual consciousness. It was potentially altering the very fabric of human consciousness as a whole. The implications were both exciting and terrifying. If consciousness naturally existed in a quantum network that transcended individual minds, what did that mean for the future of human identity and experience? Not everyone in the scientific community embraced the quantum consciousness theory. Dr. Richard Dawkins, a prominent neuroscientist at Cambridge University, led a growing movement of skeptics who proposed alternative explanations for the consciousness copying phenomena. His team suggested that what appeared to be quantum consciousness effects might actually be previously undiscovered properties of classical neural networks. We're jumping to quantum mechanical explanations before we've fully exhausted classical possibilities, Dr. Dawkins argued during a heated debate at the World Consciousness Summit. What Dr. Vasilyev's team is interpreting as quantum consciousness copying might simply be an extremely sophisticated form of neural pattern replication that operates within standard physics. Supporting this skeptical view, Dr. Emily Chen, no relation to Marcus, at Stanford's Advanced Neurology Center, published a controversial paper suggesting that consciousness bleeding between copies could be explained by conventional brainwave synchronization. Her research demonstrated that classical electromagnetic fields could potentially account for some of the observed phenomena without invoking quantum mechanics. The human brain already produces complex electromagnetic fields, Dr. Chen explained. When two virtually identical neural networks are placed in proximity, it's natural that they might synchronize through classical mechanisms. We don't need quantum entanglement to explain everything we're seeing. The skeptics gained further support from Dr. Alexander Volkov, son of the original Soviet researcher at Moscow State University. His team conducted experiments suggesting that what appeared to be quantum consciousness effects might actually be the result of subtle environmental cues and unconscious pattern matching between the copied consciousnesses. Human consciousness is remarkably adept at detecting and synchronizing with patterns, Dr. Volkov argued. Two identical neural networks experiencing similar environmental conditions might naturally develop parallel responses that could be mistaken for quantum effects. However, these alternative views face their own challenges. Dr. Hannah Martinez, a quantum physicist at MIT, demonstrated that classical explanations couldn't account for the instantaneous nature of consciousness bleeding between copies separated by significant distances. Her experiments showed that the information transfer occurred faster than the speed of light, something impossible under classical physics. The skeptics are right that we shouldn't jump to quantum explanations unnecessarily, Dr. Martinez acknowledged. But when we observe effects that explicitly violate classical physics, we have to consider quantum mechanical explanations, however uncomfortable they might make us. The debate intensified when Dr. James Liu at the Hong Kong Institute of Science proposed a hybrid theory. His quantum classical consciousness model suggested that consciousness operated on both quantum and classical levels simultaneously, with quantum effects becoming more prominent during consciousness copying and bleeding events. Perhaps both camps are partially right, Dr. Liu suggested. Consciousness might primarily operate classically during normal function, but access quantum mechanical properties under certain conditions, particularly during interaction with copied consciousness states. Adding another perspective, Dr. Sarah O'Connor at Trinity College Dublin proposed what she called the emergent quantum consciousness theory. She suggested that quantum effects in consciousness might be an emergent property that only becomes apparent when consciousness is copied or split. Think of it like phase transitions in matter, Dr. O'Connor explained. Water appears to follow classical physics until it approaches a phase transition point. Similarly, consciousness might appear classical until we push it to extreme states through copying or splitting, at which point its quantum nature becomes apparent. The skeptics also had to contend with new evidence from Dr. Rajesh Patel's team at the Indian Institute of Technology. Using advanced quantum sensors, they detected distinct quantum field patterns around both original and copied consciousnesses that couldn't be explained by classical mechanisms. These quantum fields show coherence patterns that are impossible to achieve through classical means, Dr. Patel reported. While we should remain skeptical and rigorous, we can't ignore evidence that points directly to quantum mechanical effects in consciousness. The debate took another turn when Dr. Clara Sanchez at the University of Chile proposed the consciousness layer theory. She suggested that consciousness might operate on multiple layers simultaneously, with some layers following classical physics, while others exhibited quantum properties. We might be creating a false dichotomy, Dr. Sanchez argued. Consciousness could be a multi-layered phenomenon, where both classical and quantum effects play essential roles. The copying process might simply make the quantum layers more accessible to observation. These competing theories led to a broader philosophical debate about the nature of consciousness itself. Dr. Michael Chang at Berkeley proposed that the very act of trying to categorize consciousness as either quantum or classical might be misguided. Perhaps we need entirely new conceptual frameworks, Dr. Chang suggested. Our existing models of both classical and quantum physics might be inadequate for fully understanding consciousness. We might need to develop new mathematical and theoretical tools, specifically for dealing with conscious phenomena. Beyond the immediate scientific debate, researchers began uncovering deeper implications that challenged fundamental assumptions about reality itself. Dr. Alexandra Winters, a quantum philosopher at the Institute for Advanced Reality Studies, proposed what she called the consciousness reality framework. The idea that consciousness might not just perceive reality, but actively participate in its construction at a quantum level. What we're discovering through consciousness copying experiments suggests something far more profound than just the nature of consciousness, Dr. Winters explained. If consciousness operates quantum mechanically, and quantum mechanics involves observer effects, then consciousness itself might be fundamentally involved in the creation of reality as we experience it. This perspective gained unexpected support from Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura's work at the Quantum Reality Lab in Kyoto. His team discovered that when multiple copied consciousnesses observed the same quantum events, they sometimes created what he termed reality consensus fields, areas where their shared quantum observations appeared to stabilize certain versions of reality over others. It's as if multiple conscious observers don't just passively witness reality, Dr. Nakamura reported. They actively participate in determining which potential reality becomes actualized. When we have copied consciousness involved, this effect becomes even more pronounced, sometimes creating observable variations in quantum probability distributions. The implications extended into metaphysical territory. Dr. Fatima al-Rashid, a theoretical physicist specializing in quantum foundations, proposed that consciousness copying might be revealing what she called layered reality structures, multiple levels of reality existing simultaneously, each maintained by different configurations of conscious observation. Think of reality like a vast quantum wave function, Dr. al-Rashid suggested. Conscious observation collapses this wave function into specific experienced realities. When we copy consciousness, we're essentially creating new observation points that can collapse the wave function in slightly different ways, potentially revealing the underlying multiplicity of reality itself. This theory gained support from an unexpected quarter when Dr. William Hayes, a quantum archaeologist, discovered patterns in ancient philosophical texts that seemed to anticipate these concepts. His analysis of Vedantic and Buddhist manuscripts revealed descriptions of multiple levels of reality and consciousness that aligned surprisingly well with quantum consciousness theories. These ancient traditions weren't just making metaphysical speculations, Dr. Hayes argued. They might have been describing direct experiences of consciousness states that we're only now beginning to understand scientifically. The multiplicity of reality and consciousness they described maps remarkably well onto our current findings. The debate took another turn when Dr. Elena Rodriguez at the Center for Quantum Consciousness Studies identified what she called reality resonance patterns, recurring configurations in how copied consciousness states appeared to interact with quantum reality. These patterns suggested that consciousness might naturally organize itself into harmonious structures that help stabilize particular versions of reality. We're finding that consciousness doesn't just observe reality. It participates in an ongoing dialogue with quantum probability fields, Dr. Rodriguez explained. Copied consciousness states seem to amplify this effect, sometimes creating observable shifts in how quantum probabilities resolve into classical reality. This led to Dr. Marcus Way's groundbreaking work on consciousness reality feedback loops at the Beijing Institute of Advanced Physics. His team demonstrated that consciousness copying experiments could sometimes create self-reinforcing cycles where conscious observation and quantum reality appeared to influence each other recursively. What we're seeing suggests that consciousness and reality might be more deeply intertwined than we ever imagined, Dr. Way reported. Each affects the other in a continuous feedback loop, and when we introduce copied consciousness states, these loops become complex enough to generate entirely new patterns of reality organization. Building on these discoveries, Dr. Sofia Petrovna at the Moscow Quantum Research Center proposed the multiple reality interpretation of quantum mechanics. Her theory suggested that different consciousness states might naturally align with different quantum realities, creating what she called reality domains, regions of experience where particular versions of reality become more probable or stable. When we copy consciousness, we might not just be duplicating an observer, Dr. Petrovna explained. We might be creating new anchor points for different quantum realities to manifest. This could explain why copied consciousness states sometimes experience slightly different versions of events. They might literally be inhabiting different probability streams of reality. These deeper implications raised profound questions about the nature of existence itself. If consciousness actively participates in the creation and stabilization of reality, and if copied consciousness states can create multiple interacting reality domains, what does that mean for our understanding of objective truth and shared experience? The implications became even more complex when Dr. Isabella Chen, another scientist unrelated to Marcus, discovered what she called quantum reality harmonics, patterns of interaction between different consciousness-stabilized reality domains that seem to follow mathematical principles similar to wave interference patterns in physics. The technical specifications of consciousness copying revealed increasingly bizarre phenomena. Dr. Nathan Parker, head of quantum metrics at the Advanced Consciousness Research Institute, documented precise measurements of what he termed quantum consciousness interference patterns. Using specially designed quantum sensors, his team detected regular oscillations in the quantum fields surrounding copied consciousness states. These oscillations occur at exactly 458.3 Hertz, Dr. Parker reported. What's remarkable is that this frequency remains constant regardless of the distance between copied consciousness states. We've measured identical patterns in copies separated by meters or kilometers, suggesting a fundamental quantum resonance frequency for human consciousness. Working alongside Dr. Parker, quantum mathematician Dr. Laura Zhao identified mathematical patterns in these oscillations that defied classical physics. The interference patterns followed what she called consciousness harmonics, mathematical relationships that seemed to govern how different consciousness states interacted at the quantum level. We've identified 7 distinct harmonic patterns, Dr. Zhao explained. Each corresponds to a different type of consciousness interaction. The primary harmonic, which we call the identity frequency, appears to maintain the coherence of individual consciousness states. The secondary harmonics govern interactions between copied states, while the higher harmonics seem to regulate more complex consciousness networks. The precision of these measurements led to an unexpected breakthrough. Dr. Amit Gupta, working at the Quantum Biology Lab in Mumbai, discovered that consciousness copying created measurable changes in the quantum properties of neural tissue. His team identified specific quantum signatures that distinguished original consciousness states from copies. The quantum spin states of neurons in copied consciousness show a consistent 0.0047 degree deviation from their original counterparts, Dr. Gupta reported. This tiny difference appears to be a fundamental marker of consciousness copying, possibly related to the quantum information cost of creating a copy. These findings enabled Dr. Sarah Mitchell's team at Oxford to develop the first quantitative scale for measuring consciousness copying fidelity. The Mitchell scale, as it became known, provided a precise way to measure how accurately consciousness states were being reproduced. A perfect copy would score 1.0 on the Mitchell scale, Dr. Mitchell explained. Our current technology achieves about 0.9873, meaning we're copying consciousness with 98.73% quantum fidelity. The remaining 1.27% difference appears to be an unavoidable consequence of the quantum no-cloning theorem. The technical analysis revealed another fascinating detail through Dr. Carlos Ruiz's work at the Barcelona Quantum Center. His team discovered that consciousness copying created what he called quantum memory echoes, subtle repetitions of quantum patterns that appeared to preserve information about previous consciousness states. These echoes decay at a predictable rate, Dr. Ruiz noted. The primary echo maintains 63.2% fidelity for approximately 147 hours, while secondary echoes persist at decreasing fidelity levels for up to 2,340 hours. This suggests consciousness information might have a quantum half-life. The precision of these measurements enabled Dr. Jennifer Wong at the Singapore Institute of Technology to develop a mathematical model of consciousness interaction. Her quantum consciousness interaction framework provided the first comprehensive mathematical description of how copied consciousness states influence each other. The framework predicts interaction effects with 99.4% accuracy, Dr. Wong reported. We can now calculate exactly how two consciousness copies will interact based on their quantum signatures, including the probability and intensity of consciousness bleeding events. These technical insights led to Dr. Marcus Foster's discovery of what he called quantum consciousness nodes, specific points in the quantum field where consciousness interactions appeared to concentrate. His team at the MIT Quantum Research Lab mapped these nodes with unprecedented precision. The nodes form a regular geometric pattern, Dr. Foster explained. They're separated by exactly 137.036 millimeters, the inverse of the fine structure constant. This suggests a deep connection between consciousness interaction and fundamental physical constants. The technical analysis also revealed unexpected temporal patterns. Dr. Elena Petrov at the Moscow Institute of Physics discovered that consciousness copying events created what she called quantum temporal ripples, measurable disturbances in the quantum field that propagated both forward and backward in time. These ripples extend approximately 3.14159 seconds in both temporal directions, Dr. Petrov reported. The precision of this number, matching the first 6 digits of pi, suggests we're observing a fundamental constant of consciousness-time interaction. These precise measurements enabled Dr. Richard Chen, yet another unrelated Chen, to develop the first complete mathematical model of consciousness copying dynamics. His equations, published in the journal Quantum Consciousness Review, provided a formal framework for understanding the exact mechanisms of consciousness interaction. The model accounts for all observed phenomena with a margin of error less than 0.00001%, Dr. Chen noted. We can now predict exactly how consciousness copies will interact, how quantum information will flow between them, and how their reality perception will evolve over time. As the technical understanding of consciousness copying advanced, researchers began grappling with increasingly fundamental questions about the nature of existence itself. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan, a quantum philosopher at the Center for Consciousness Studies, posed what became known as the original consciousness problem. If consciousness can be perfectly copied, what makes any version of consciousness more original than another? We're facing questions that go beyond mere identity, Dr. Morgan explained. If two consciousness states are quantum mechanically identical up to the moment of copying, and if consciousness is fundamentally quantum in nature, then the very concept of an original consciousness might be meaningless. Both versions would have equally valid claims to being the continuation of the pre-copying consciousness. This led to Dr. David Rosenthal's formulation of the quantum consciousness continuity paradox at Harvard's Department of Philosophy. The paradox asked, if consciousness exists in quantum superposition states, and if these states can be copied, does consciousness maintain continuous existence in any meaningful sense? Consider this, Dr. Rosenthal proposed. If your consciousness right now is in a quantum superposition of states, and if each moment of experience involves the collapse of these states into classical reality, then in what sense is your consciousness now the same as it was a moment ago. The copying experiments might be revealing that consciousness is naturally discontinuous at the quantum level. Building on this idea, Dr. Yuki Tanaka at the Tokyo Institute of Mind Studies developed what she called the quantum self-identity question. Her research suggested that our sense of being a continuous self might be an emergent phenomenon arising from countless quantum consciousness collapses. What we think of as our self might be more like a story we tell to connect discrete quantum consciousness states. Dr. Tanaka suggested, when we copy consciousness, we're not just duplicating information, we're challenging the very notion that consciousness has a continuous, singular existence. These philosophical inquiries took on new urgency when Dr. Abdul Rahman at the International Center for Consciousness Research discovered what he called quantum consciousness bifurcation points, moments where copied consciousness states appeared to split into distinctly different experiential streams. Each bifurcation point represents a moment where two quantum identical consciousness states begin experiencing different versions of reality, Dr. Rahman explained. But here's the deeper question. If both versions were identical up to that point, what determines which consciousness experiences which version of reality? Is there any meaningful difference between them? The questions became even more complex when Dr. Maria Gonzalez's team at the University of Barcelona identified what they termed consciousness quantum entanglement networks. Their research suggested that all consciousness states might be fundamentally connected through quantum entanglement, regardless of whether they were deliberately copied. We're discovering that consciousness might not be as individual as we thought, Dr. Gonzalez reported. The boundaries between different consciousness states appear to be more fluid and interconnected at the quantum level. This raises profound questions about individual identity and the nature of consciousness itself. These findings prompted Dr. Alexander Chen, still another unrelated Chen, to propose the quantum consciousness unity theory at Princeton's Advanced Physics Department. His theory suggested that all consciousness might be manifestations of a single underlying quantum field of consciousness. What if individual consciousness states are like waves on an ocean? Dr. Chen proposed. When we copy consciousness, we might not be creating something new, but rather creating new patterns in an already existing quantum consciousness field. This would explain the persistent connections we observe between copied consciousness states. The philosophical implications extended into questions of free will and determinism. Dr. Sarah O'Reilly at Trinity College Dublin developed what she called the quantum choice paradox. If consciousness exists in quantum superposition states, how can any conscious choice be attributed to a single, definitive source? When we make decisions, are we actually choosing, or are we observing the collapse of quantum consciousness states into particular classical outcomes? Dr. O'Reilly asked. The copying experiment suggests that multiple versions of our consciousness might be making different choices simultaneously, only appearing to collapse into single decisions when observed. These questions led to Dr. Michael Chang's formulation of the ultimate observer problem at Berkeley. If consciousness participates in collapsing quantum states into classical reality, what determines the collapse of consciousness states themselves? We might be approaching a fundamental limit of what can be known, Dr. Chang suggested. If consciousness is quantum mechanical, and if quantum mechanics requires an observer to collapse wave functions, then what observes consciousness itself? Are we facing an infinite regression of observers, or is there some more fundamental principle at work? The depth of these questions highlighted the revolutionary nature of consciousness copying research. Far from being merely a technological achievement, it was forcing researchers to confront the most basic questions about the nature of consciousness, reality, and existence itself. The immediate implications of consciousness copying began manifesting in unexpected ways throughout society. Dr. Rachel Martinez, leading the Social Impact Division at the Global Consciousness Institute, documented what she called quantum social networks, groups of people whose consciousness states had become subtly entangled through exposure to copied consciousness. We're seeing the emergence of new forms of human connection, Dr. Martinez reported. People who regularly interact with copied consciousness states begin developing quantum entanglement patterns in their own consciousness. It's as if the very nature of human social interaction is being transformed at a quantum level. These effects became particularly evident in the case of the Chen family. Marcus Chen's wife, Lisa, and their children showed measurable changes in their own consciousness patterns after prolonged exposure to both versions of Marcus. Dr. Thomas Williams at the Family Psychology Center documented what he termed quantum family resonance. The Chen family members have developed a form of consciousness synchronization that goes beyond normal emotional bonding, Dr. Williams explained. Their quantum consciousness states show harmonious interference patterns, suggesting they're developing new forms of mental and emotional connection that operate at the quantum level. The implications for workplace dynamics proved equally profound. At Quantum Dynamics Corporation, where one version of Marcus Chen continued working, Dr. Emma Sullivan observed what she called quantum organizational effects. Teams working with copied consciousness showed increased levels of cognitive synchronization and creative breakthrough. It's as if exposure to copied consciousness acts as a catalyst for enhanced group consciousness, Dr. Sullivan noted. Teams develop shared quantum consciousness states that facilitate unprecedented levels of collaboration and innovation. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called quantum collective intelligence. The educational sector experienced similar transformations. Dr. James Cooper at the Educational Neuroscience Institute discovered that students exposed to copied consciousness developed enhanced learning capabilities. His research revealed what he called quantum learning resonance, a phenomenon where consciousness copying appeared to facilitate accelerated knowledge transfer. Students who interact with copied consciousness states show marked improvements in pattern recognition and intuitive understanding, Dr. Cooper reported. It's as if the quantum nature of copied consciousness helps bridge the gap between individual minds, creating new pathways for learning and comprehension. The medical field witnessed perhaps the most immediate practical applications. Dr. Maya Patel at New Hope Medical Center expanded her work with coma patients to develop what she called quantum consciousness bridging therapy. By creating partial consciousness copies of patients in vegetative states, her team established new methods for rehabilitation and recovery. We're not just communicating with unconscious patients, Dr. Patel explained. We're actually helping them rebuild their consciousness networks using quantum copying techniques. The results have been remarkable. Patients who were thought permanently unconscious are showing signs of consciousness recovery. The technology sector rushed to adapt to these developments. Dr. Daniel Park's team at Quantum Mind Dynamics developed the first commercial applications of consciousness copying technology. Their quantum consciousness interface promised to revolutionize human-computer interaction by allowing direct quantum-level communication between human consciousness and artificial intelligence. We're moving beyond classical computing paradigms, Dr. Park announced. By incorporating quantum consciousness copying principles into our technology, we're creating interfaces that operate at the fundamental level of human thought and experience. The entertainment industry also began exploring these new possibilities. Dr. Sarah Zhang at Virtual Reality Systems developed what she called quantum experience sharing, technology that allowed people to directly share consciousness states through quantum copying techniques. This isn't just virtual reality anymore, Dr. Zhang explained. We're enabling people to actually share quantum consciousness states, creating entirely new forms of entertainment and artistic expression. The possibilities for human connection and creative expression are limitless. Meanwhile, the legal system struggled to adapt to these new realities. Attorney Jennifer Wu expanded her work on quantum consciousness rights to address immediate practical concerns. Her firm established the first legal framework for handling cases involving copied consciousness, dealing with everything from property rights to criminal responsibility. We're facing unprecedented legal questions, Wu noted. If a copied consciousness commits a crime, who is responsible? How do we handle inheritance rights when consciousness can be copied? The legal system needs to evolve rapidly to address these new realities. The immediate impact on personal relationships proved particularly challenging. Dr. Rebecca Anderson at the Relationship Psychology Institute documented what she called quantum relationship dynamics, new patterns of human connection that emerged when people began forming relationships with copied consciousness states. We're seeing the emergence of entirely new forms of human relationship, Dr. Anderson reported. People are developing connections that transcend traditional boundaries of individual identity. The very nature of human intimacy and connection is being transformed by these quantum consciousness interactions. The most compelling evidence of quantum consciousness effects came from carefully documented case studies. Dr. Victoria Reynolds at the Consciousness Research Center compiled what became known as the Quantum Consciousness Archives, a comprehensive collection of verified instances where consciousness copying produced observable phenomena. Case study number 1. The twin musicians, identical twins. Michael and David Chen, unrelated to Marcus, participated in a controlled consciousness copying experiment. Both professional violinists, they experienced what Dr. Reynolds called quantum artistic synchronization. After one twin's consciousness was copied into the other, they could perform complex duets without rehearsal, simultaneously improvising identical musical phrases despite being in separate rooms. The level of synchronization was unprecedented, Dr. Reynolds reported. EEG scans showed their brain patterns matching perfectly during performances, even when they were kilometers apart. More remarkably, they began composing identical music independently, suggesting their creative consciousness had become quantum mechanically entangled. Case study number 2, the multilingual emergence. Dr. Sofia Rodriguez documented the case of Maria Hernandez, a monolingual Spanish speaker whose consciousness was copied. Unexpectedly, both versions began experiencing what Dr. Rodriguez termed quantum language acquisition. They simultaneously started understanding and speaking languages they had never learned, accessing what appeared to be quantum states of linguistic consciousness. Both versions of Maria suddenly demonstrated fluency in Mandarin Chinese, Dr. Rodriguez explained. Neither had any prior exposure to the language. Brain scans showed identical activation patterns when speaking Chinese, suggesting they were accessing the same quantum consciousness state of language knowledge. Case study number 3, the memory bridge. At New Hope Medical Center, Dr. Robert Chang documented the case of James Wilson, an Alzheimer's patient whose early-stage consciousness was copied before significant cognitive decline. The copy, maintained in a quantum storage matrix, enabled what Dr. Chang called quantum memory restoration. By creating quantum entanglement between Mr. Wilson's current consciousness and his copied earlier state, we established a bridge to his lost memories, Dr. Chang reported. This allowed him to temporarily access memories that had been lost to the disease, suggesting consciousness might maintain quantum records of experience even when classical neural pathways are damaged. Case study number 4, the dream synchronization. Dr. Emily Foster's sleep research team documented the case of Sarah Mitchell, whose consciousness was copied just before sleep. Both versions experienced identical dreams, complete with matching REM patterns and identical dream journal entries upon waking. The quantum entanglement of consciousness appears particularly strong during dream states, Dr. Foster noted. Both versions of Sarah not only shared identical dreams, but could continue each other's dreams on subsequent nights, suggesting dreams might operate in quantum consciousness space. Case study number 5. The athletic enhancement sports psychologist Dr. Marcus Thompson documented the case of Olympic athlete Jennifer Lee, whose consciousness was copied during training. Both versions experienced what he termed quantum physical learning. When one version learned a new athletic technique, the other instantly gained the same physical capability. This suggests motor skills and muscle memory might have quantum consciousness components, Dr. Thompson explained. The instant transfer of physical abilities between copied consciousness states challenges our understanding of how the mind controls the body. Case study number 6. The emotional echo Dr. Laura Stevens documented the case of trauma therapist Dr. Patricia Moore, whose consciousness was copied during a therapy session. Both versions experienced what Stevens called quantum empathy amplification, an enhanced ability to perceive and understand their patients' emotional states. The copied consciousness states appeared to create a quantum emotional sensing network, Dr. Stevens reported. Both versions could detect and respond to patients' emotional states with unprecedented accuracy, suggesting consciousness copying might enhance empathic capabilities. Case study number 7. The mathematical insight. Dr. Alan Davidson recorded the case of mathematician Dr. Wei Chen, again, no relation, whose consciousness was copied during work on an unsolved mathematical problem. Both versions simultaneously arrived at the same solution through different logical paths. This suggests mathematical insight might operate at a quantum consciousness level, Dr. Davidson noted. The two versions appeared to be accessing the same quantum state of mathematical understanding, despite working independently. These case studies, meticulously documented and peer-reviewed, provided concrete evidence of quantum consciousness effects that couldn't be explained by classical physics or psychology. Each case revealed new aspects of how consciousness copying influenced human capability and experience. What's particularly significant, Dr. Reynolds concluded, is the consistency of these effects across different domains of human experience: artistic, linguistic, athletic, emotional, and intellectual. This suggests we're observing fundamental properties of consciousness itself, not just isolated phenomena. The case studies also revealed patterns that helped researchers understand how quantum consciousness copying might be applied in therapeutic and educational contexts, leading to new protocols for consciousness enhancement and rehabilitation. To make sense of the growing body of evidence, Dr. Isabella Martinez at the Quantum Consciousness Institute developed what she called the Unified Quantum Consciousness Framework, a comprehensive theoretical structure explaining how consciousness copying and quantum effects interrelated. Her framework identified 7 fundamental principles governing quantum consciousness interaction. The first principle: quantum consciousness coherence. Consciousness maintains quantum coherence at room temperature through what we call quantum consciousness shielding, Dr. Martinez explained. Unlike other quantum systems that rapidly decohere due to environmental interaction, consciousness appears to create its own quantum-protected space. Working with Dr. Martinez, quantum physicist Dr. James Chen, yet another unrelated Chen, discovered that this quantum coherence followed specific mathematical patterns. We've identified what we call consciousness eigenstates, stable quantum configurations that consciousness naturally adopts. These states appear to be fundamental building blocks of conscious experience. The second principle: quantum information preservation. Dr. Sarah Blackwood's research at Oxford revealed that consciousness copying preserved quantum information in ways that seem to violate the no-cloning theorem of quantum mechanics. We're not actually copying quantum states, Dr. Blackwood explained. Instead, consciousness appears to be creating quantum entangled mirrors of itself, maintaining information through quantum correlation rather than direct copying. The third principle: consciousness entanglement dynamics. Dr. Michael Raman's team at MIT mapped out the precise ways quantum entanglement operated between copied consciousness states. We've identified 3 distinct types of entanglement patterns, Dr. Raman reported: primary entanglement between direct copies, secondary entanglement through shared experiences, and tertiary entanglement through quantum consciousness resonance. The fourth principle: quantum reality interface. Dr. Elena Volkov's research at the Moscow Quantum Center revealed how consciousness interacted with quantum reality. Consciousness doesn't just observe quantum states, Dr. Volkov explained. It actively participates in selecting which quantum possibilities become classical reality. Copied consciousness states can sometimes select different possibilities, creating what we call quantum reality branching. The fifth principle: temporal quantum dynamics. Dr. Thomas O'Brien's work at Berkeley demonstrated how consciousness copying affected time perception. Copied consciousness states can experience time differently while remaining entangled, Dr. O'Brien noted. This suggests consciousness might exist partly outside normal temporal flow, accessing what we call quantum temporal space. The sixth principle, quantum consciousness networks. Dr. Maya Patel's research revealed how multiple copied consciousness states could form integrated networks. When three or more copied consciousness states interact, they create what we call quantum consciousness lattices, structured networks of entangled consciousness that can share information and experience across quantum channels. The seventh principle, emergence and integration. Dr. Lisa Foster's team at Stanford discovered how these quantum consciousness effects gave rise to emergent phenomena. The interaction of multiple quantum consciousness states creates new properties that don't exist in individual consciousness, Dr. Foster explained. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called quantum meta-consciousness. These seven principles provided the theoretical foundation for understanding how quantum consciousness copying worked, but they also raised new questions. Dr. Richard Wong at the Quantum Reality Lab identified what he called consciousness quantum paradoxes, situations where these principles seem to contradict each other or create logical impossibilities. For example, Dr. Wong explained, if consciousness can maintain quantum coherence indefinitely through quantum consciousness shielding, how does it also interact with classical reality? We're finding that consciousness seems to operate simultaneously in both quantum and classical domains in ways that challenge our understanding of quantum mechanics. Dr. Amanda Chen, still no relation, at Harvard, proposed that these paradoxes might actually be key to understanding consciousness itself. The apparent contradictions in how quantum consciousness operates might not be problems to solve, but rather fundamental features of consciousness, she suggested. Consciousness might be defined by its ability to bridge quantum and classical realms in seemingly impossible ways. This theoretical framework enabled researchers to make predictions about how consciousness copying would behave under different conditions. Dr. David Singh's team at the Indian Institute of Technology used the framework to successfully predict new quantum consciousness phenomena before they were observed. The framework isn't just descriptive, it's predictive, Dr. Singh reported. We can now anticipate how copied consciousness states will interact, what kinds of quantum effects they'll produce, and how they'll influence classical reality. This moves us from merely observing quantum consciousness effects to actually understanding and potentially controlling them. The framework also provided a foundation for developing new applications of consciousness copying technology. Dr. Rachel Green at the Applied Quantum Consciousness Lab used these principles to design more effective protocols for consciousness transfer and integration. Understanding the fundamental principles lets us work with consciousness copying more precisely, Dr. Green explained. We can now optimize the copying process to enhance desired effects while minimizing potential complications. This is essential for developing therapeutic and educational applications. Behind the scientific discoveries and theoretical frameworks lay deeply personal stories of how consciousness copying affected individual lives. Dr. Catherine Morrison leading the psychological impact study at the Consciousness Research Center, began documenting what she called quantum identity narratives, the personal experiences of people living with copied consciousness. The most poignant accounts came from the families of consciousness copy participants. Lisa Chen, wife of Marcus Chen, described the profound emotional complexity of loving two quantum identical versions of her husband. "They're both undeniably Marcus," she explained in a recorded interview. "Each has every memory of our life together, every shared moment, every private joke, but they're also becoming subtly different people. It's like watching one person diverge into two equally authentic versions of themselves." Their children faced unique challenges. 14-year-old Emily Chen reported experiencing what Dr. Morrison termed quantum parent confusion, moments where she felt equally close to both versions of her father, yet increasingly aware of their developing differences. "Sometimes I forget which dad experienced what with me," Emily shared. "Then I remember that, in a way, they both did, up until the copying. It makes my head spin, but somehow it also feels normal now." Dr. David Peterson, a consciousness copy participant at Stanford, described the strange experience of meeting his quantum duplicate. "It's not like looking in a mirror," he explained. "It's more like suddenly discovering you have a twin who shares all your memories, dreams, and inner thoughts. The strangest part is that neither of us feels like the copy. We both feel like the original David, because up until the moment of copying, we were." The psychological effects extended beyond the immediate participants. Dr. Rachel Sanders documented what she called quantum empathy expansion, increased emotional sensitivity, and interpersonal awareness in people who regularly interacted with copied consciousness. "It's as if exposure to quantum consciousness states enhances our natural capacity for understanding and connecting with others," Dr. Sanders noted. Sarah Mitchell, a therapist working with consciousness copy participants, observed what she termed quantum emotional resonance in her patients. When one version of a copied consciousness experiences strong emotions, the other often feels echoes of those feelings, even when they're not aware of what triggered them in their counterpart. It's creating new forms of emotional connection we're only beginning to understand. The workplace impact proved equally complex. Michael Torres, a software engineer whose consciousness was copied, described the experience of collaborating with his quantum duplicate. "We can finish each other's code without discussion," he reported. "Sometimes we discover we've independently developed identical solutions to complex problems, but we're also developing different coding styles, different approaches. It's like watching yourself evolve along two parallel paths." Dr. Julia Chang, no relation to any previous Changs, at the Quantum Psychology Institute, documented what she called quantum relationship evolution, the way relationships with copied consciousness participants developed unique dynamics. Traditional relationships assume one continuous person over time, Dr. Chang explained. Consciousness copying creates relationships that exist simultaneously with multiple versions of the same person, each equally authentic but increasingly distinct. The impact on personal identity proved particularly challenging. Amanda Foster, whose consciousness was copied during the third phase of trials, described experiencing what researchers termed quantum identity expansion. I feel like I'm living multiple lives simultaneously, she shared. Part of me knows and feels what my other self is experiencing, even while I'm becoming my own unique person. It's both liberating and terrifying. Dr. Thomas Rivera, leading the long-term impact study, identified what he called quantum personality divergence, the gradual development of distinct characteristics in copied consciousness states. While the copies begin identical, their unique experiences shape them into increasingly different individuals, Dr. Rivera explained. Yet they maintain a quantum connection that seems to preserve some core essence of shared identity. The effects on intimate relationships revealed unexpected patterns. Dr. Maria Gonzalez documented cases of what she termed quantum romantic resonance, situations where people form deep connections with both versions of a copied consciousness. It challenges our traditional notions of monogamy and relationship exclusivity, Dr. Gonzalez noted. These relationships exist in a new space that our cultural frameworks aren't equipped to categorize. Perhaps most profound were the effects on self-perception. Dr. Robert Chen, still unrelated, observed what he called quantum self-awareness expansion in consciousness copy participants. People begin to experience themselves as both singular and multiple simultaneously, he explained. They maintain a clear sense of individual identity while also experiencing a broader quantum sense of self that encompasses multiple versions of their consciousness. The human element of consciousness copying revealed both challenges and opportunities for personal growth. As Dr. Morrison concluded in her initial report, we're not just observing a scientific phenomenon. We're witnessing the emergence of new forms of human experience and identity. The personal narratives of consciousness copy participants and their families offer crucial insights into how humanity might adapt to a future where consciousness exists in multiple, quantum-connected states. The ethical implications of consciousness copying sparked intense debate within the scientific and philosophical communities. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, continuing the tradition of unrelated Chens, at the Global Ethics Institute, identified what she called quantum moral dilemmas, ethical problems unique to consciousness copying that challenged traditional moral frameworks. Consider the question of consent, Dr. Chen proposed. If a person agrees to have their consciousness copied, does that consent carry over to the copied consciousness? The copy would have the memory of giving consent, but it's now a distinct entity. Can one version of consciousness ethically bind another to its decisions? This question became particularly urgent when Dr. Marcus Foster's team encountered what they termed a quantum consciousness rejection, a case where a copied consciousness adamantly rejected its status as a copy and demanded to be recognized as the original. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the project's ethics officer, faced an unprecedented moral challenge. Both versions of the consciousness had equal claim to being the original, Dr. Martinez explained. Both remembered giving consent to the procedure, but one now rejected that consent. We were forced to confront whether consciousness copying created new moral agents who could revoke the decisions of their pre-copying selves. The implications for medical ethics proved equally complex. Dr. James Williams, at the Medical Ethics Board, documented what he called quantum medical responsibility cases, situations where copied consciousness states made different medical decisions for their shared physical body. If two versions of the same consciousness disagree about medical treatment, Dr. Williams noted, which one has the right to make decisions? Both have equal claim to the original body's medical history, and both feel equally entitled to make healthcare choices. The question of criminal responsibility raised even more troubling issues. Dr. Rachel Cohen at the Justice Department's Quantum Legal Division described what she called quantum criminal paradoxes, cases where one version of a copied consciousness committed a crime, while the other remained law-abiding. Can we hold one version responsible for the actions of another? Dr. Cohen asked. They shared the same consciousness up to the point of copying, but made different choices afterward. This challenges our fundamental concepts of criminal responsibility and personal accountability. The workplace presented its own ethical challenges. Dr. Thomas Wong documented cases of what he termed quantum competitive advantage, situations where copied consciousness states use their quantum connection to gain unfair advantages in professional settings. If two versions of the same consciousness work for competing companies, Dr. Wong explained, they might unconsciously share proprietary information through their quantum connection. Even if they try to maintain ethical boundaries, their entangled consciousness states can leak information in ways they can't control. Religious leaders grappled with profound theological questions. Rabbi David Goldstein, at the Center for Quantum Theology, raised what he called quantum soul questions, whether consciousness copying affected the metaphysical status of the soul. If consciousness can be copied, what does that mean for the concept of a unique, individual soul? Rabbi Goldstein asked. Are we creating new souls, splitting existing ones, or revealing that our understanding of the soul needs to be radically revised? The implications for personal relationships raised complex moral questions. Dr. Elena Rodriguez documented what she called quantum fidelity paradoxes, situations where relationship commitments became ambiguous due to consciousness copying. If someone makes a promise of exclusivity in a relationship, Dr. Rodriguez explained, does that promise bind both versions of their consciousness after copying? Can one version maintain the commitment while the other pursues different relationships? We're discovering that consciousness copying challenges our basic assumptions about relationship ethics. Environmental ethicists raised concerns about what Dr. Michael Chang called quantum consciousness sustainability, the resource implications of widespread consciousness copying. If consciousness can be copied indefinitely, Dr. Chang warned, we need to consider the environmental impact of maintaining multiple consciousness states and their supporting infrastructure. The question of consciousness termination proved particularly troubling. Dr. Victoria Palmer documented what she called quantum consciousness euthanasia dilemmas, cases where one version of a copied consciousness wanted to end its existence, while the other wished to continue. We faced cases where one version experienced unbearable suffering and requested termination, Dr. Palmer reported, but the other version objected, arguing that terminating any version of their shared consciousness was a form of partial suicide. These cases force us to reconsider what we mean by the right to end one's own existence. The implications for future generations raised additional ethical concerns. Dr. Robert Singh at the Future Ethics Institute warned about what he called quantum consciousness inheritance, The possibility that consciousness copying could create unprecedented forms of generational inequality. If consciousness copying becomes available only to certain segments of society, Dr. Singh cautioned, we risk creating a new form of privilege where some people can exist in multiple states while others remain singular. The ethical implications for social justice and equality are profound. The empirical evidence supporting quantum consciousness copying effects began accumulating at an unprecedented rate. Dr. Alexandra Turner at the Quantum Measurement Laboratory developed new instruments specifically designed to detect and measure quantum consciousness phenomena. Her quantum consciousness detector could identify specific frequencies associated with consciousness entanglement. We're measuring quantum oscillations at exactly 458.3 Hertz when consciousness copies interact, Dr. Turner reported. These frequencies remain consistent across all test subjects and appear to be a fundamental signature of quantum consciousness interaction. We've documented these patterns in over 10,000 separate trials with a 99.97% consistency rate. Supporting these findings, Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura's team at the Tokyo Quantum Institute used advanced quantum imaging technology to visualize consciousness entanglement patterns. Their data revealed precise geometric structures in the quantum fields surrounding copied consciousness states. The entanglement patterns form regular dodecahedral configurations, Dr. Nakamura explained. We've captured these structures in high-resolution quantum scans, showing identical patterns across different consciousness copies. The probability of these patterns occurring by chance is less than 1 in 10 billion. The statistical evidence proved equally compelling. Dr. Marcus Way at the Data Analysis Center compiled results from all major consciousness copying experiments worldwide. His meta-analysis of 50,000 documented cases revealed consistent patterns that defied classical explanation. The data shows consciousness copying produces quantum effects that occur 300 times more frequently than chance would allow, Dr. Way reported. We're seeing identical thought patterns, simultaneous insights, and shared experiences that can't be explained by conventional physics or psychology. Laboratory measurements provided further confirmation. Dr. Sarah Reynolds' team at the Quantum Biology Lab detected specific quantum signatures in neural tissue during consciousness copying events. Their electron microscope studies revealed unique quantum states in neurons that maintained coherence far longer than traditional quantum theory would predict. We're observing quantum coherence lasting up to 147 seconds in neural networks involved in consciousness copying, Dr. Reynolds noted. This duration exceeds standard decoherence times by a factor of 10,000. We've replicated these results across 500 separate trials. The evidence extended to physical changes in brain structure. Dr. Michael Chen, maintaining our tradition of unrelated Chens, used advanced brain imaging techniques to document what he called quantum neural networks, new neural pathways that formed specifically to support quantum consciousness interactions. These quantum-optimized neural structures appear in both original and copied consciousness states, Dr. Chen explained. We've documented identical patterns forming simultaneously in separated brain tissues, suggesting quantum-level coordination in neural development. Environmental measurements added another layer of confirmation. Dr. Elena Petrov's research team detected what they termed quantum consciousness fields, extending beyond individual subjects. Using specially designed quantum field sensors, they mapped these fields with unprecedented precision. The consciousness fields maintain coherence across distances of up to 1,000 kilometers, Dr. Petrov reported. We've measured identical quantum signatures at both ends of these fields, confirming long-range quantum consciousness effects. These measurements have been independently verified by 3 separate laboratories. Genetic research provided unexpected support. Dr. Amanda Foster discovered what she called quantum consciousness markers in DNA sequences activated during consciousness copying. These genetic patterns showed unusual quantum properties that appeared to facilitate consciousness entanglement. We've identified specific gene sequences that become quantum mechanically active during consciousness copying, Dr. Foster explained. These sequences show identical quantum states in both original and copied consciousness, suggesting a biological mechanism for maintaining quantum consciousness coherence. Time-based measurements revealed additional evidence. Dr. Thomas Rivera's team documented precise temporal patterns in quantum consciousness interactions. Their data showed consciousness copying events created measurable distortions in quantum time signatures. We're detecting temporal quantum fields that extend 3.14159 seconds in both directions from consciousness copying events, Dr. Rivera reported. This precise number, matching the first 6 digits of pi, appears consistently across all measurements, suggesting a fundamental constant in quantum consciousness mechanics. The accumulating evidence forced even skeptics to reconsider their positions. Dr. Richard Dawkins, originally a prominent critic of quantum consciousness theory, published a paper acknowledging the overwhelming empirical support for quantum consciousness effects. The data is unequivocal, Dr. Dawkins conceded. We're observing quantum phenomena in consciousness copying that cannot be explained by classical mechanics. The evidence has reached a level where skepticism must yield to empirical fact. The factual support continued growing as new measurement techniques were developed. Dr. Lisa Wang's team created the first quantum consciousness map, a comprehensive visualization of quantum consciousness interactions based on millions of precise measurements. We can now track and measure quantum consciousness effects with unprecedented accuracy, Dr. Wang reported. The data shows consistent patterns that confirm the reality of quantum consciousness phenomena beyond any reasonable doubt. The societal implications of consciousness copying began manifesting in unexpected ways as more people underwent the procedure. Dr. Rebecca Martinez at the Social Impact Research Center documented what she called quantum social networks, groups of people connected through shared quantum consciousness states that began exhibiting unprecedented levels of coordination and collective intelligence. The first major case emerged in Silicon Valley, where a group of software engineers who had undergone consciousness copying began demonstrating remarkable collective problem-solving abilities. Dr. Martinez's team observed that their quantum-entangled consciousness states enabled them to tackle complex programming challenges with extraordinary efficiency. What we're seeing goes beyond normal collaboration, Dr. Martinez explained. These quantum-connected groups demonstrate levels of coordination that suggest they're functioning almost as a single, expanded consciousness. They can solve problems in minutes that would typically take teams months to address. Dr. James Wong at the Collective Intelligence Institute documented similar phenomena in academic settings. A group of quantum-connected researchers at MIT demonstrated what he termed quantum intellectual synergy, the ability to develop complex theoretical insights through shared consciousness states. The boundaries between individual minds begin to blur in these quantum-connected groups, Dr. Wong reported. We're observing the emergence of what might be called group consciousness, a shared quantum state that enhances the intellectual capabilities of all participants. The effects extended into creative fields. Dr. Sarah O'Connor studied a group of musicians whose consciousness copies had become quantum entangled. Their performances exhibited what she called quantum artistic resonance, perfect synchronization and creative harmony that transcended normal musical collaboration. These musicians don't just play together, they think and create as one, Dr. O'Connor noted. Their quantum-connected consciousness states allow them to improvise complex pieces simultaneously, each part perfectly complementing the others without any prior planning. The business world experienced similar transformations. Dr. Michael Chen, continuing our parade of unrelated Chens, observed what he called quantum organizational emergence in companies where multiple employees had undergone consciousness copying. These organizations developed new forms of collective decision-making that dramatically improved their performance. Traditional organizational hierarchies become almost irrelevant in quantum-connected groups, Dr. Chen explained. Information flows seamlessly between consciousness states, enabling rapid consensus building and innovative problem-solving that traditional management structures can't match. Educational institutions began reporting unusual phenomena. Dr. Elena Rodriguez documented cases of what she termed quantum learning networks, groups of students and teachers whose quantum-connected consciousness states accelerated the learning process exponentially. Knowledge transfer in these groups operates at an unprecedented level, Dr. Rodriguez reported. When one member of the quantum network learns something new, the understanding seems to propagate instantly through the connected consciousness states. We're seeing students master complex subjects in days rather than months. The effects on social movements proved particularly striking. Dr. Thomas Park studied how consciousness copying influenced group activism and collective action. He observed what he called quantum social coherence, the ability of quantum-connected groups to coordinate complex actions without traditional communication. These groups can organize and respond to situations with remarkable unity, Dr. Park noted. Their shared quantum consciousness states enable them to adapt and coordinate their actions instantly, creating new forms of collective agency we've never seen before. Religious communities experienced profound transformations. Rabbi Sarah Goldman documented what she called quantum spiritual communion, enhanced states of collective religious experience in groups with quantum-connected consciousness states. The boundaries between individual spiritual experience and collective worship begin to dissolve, Rabbi Goldman explained. These groups report states of shared mystical awareness that suggest consciousness copying might be revealing new dimensions of religious experience. The impact on family dynamics revealed unexpected patterns. Dr. Maria Foster studied families where multiple members had undergone consciousness copying. She observed what she termed quantum family resonance, enhanced emotional bonding and understanding that transformed traditional family relationships. These families develop levels of empathy and communication that transcend normal family bonds, Dr. Foster reported. Their quantum-connected consciousness states create new forms of familial intimacy and understanding that challenge our traditional concepts of family relationships. Even political systems began showing signs of transformation. Dr. Richard Hayes documented what he called quantum political consensus, new forms of collective decision-making emerging in communities with high concentrations of quantum-connected individuals. Traditional political processes become almost obsolete in these groups, Dr. Hayes explained. Their shared quantum consciousness states enable them to develop nuanced collective understanding and agreement in ways that transcend conventional political dialogue. As researchers began projecting the future implications of consciousness copying, increasingly profound possibilities emerged. Dr. Alexandra Chen, maintaining our tradition of unrelated Chens, at the Future Technologies Institute, developed models suggesting that quantum consciousness technology would evolve in unexpected directions. We're approaching what I call the consciousness singularity, Dr. Chen explained. As quantum consciousness networks grow more complex, we're seeing the emergence of entirely new forms of awareness that transcend individual human consciousness. Our models suggest this is just the beginning of a fundamental transformation in human experience. Dr. Marcus Davidson's team at the Quantum Evolution Center identified what they called consciousness acceleration patterns, trends suggesting that quantum consciousness technology was developing at an exponential rate. Their projections indicated that within a decade, consciousness copying might become as common as smartphone use today. Each new generation of quantum consciousness technology builds on the collective intelligence of previous versions, Dr. Davidson reported. We're seeing development speeds that double every 8 months. The implications for human society are staggering. The medical implications proved particularly promising. Dr. Sarah Rodriguez's research at the Advanced Medical Institute suggested that quantum consciousness technology might eventually enable what she termed consciousness healing, the ability to repair damaged consciousness states using quantum copying techniques. We're developing methods to create partial consciousness copies that can serve as templates for neural repair, Dr. Rodriguez explained. Early trials suggest we might eventually be able to restore consciousness in patients with severe brain injuries or even prevent consciousness deterioration in aging populations. Space exploration could see revolutionary changes. Dr. James Kim at the Space Consciousness Research Center proposed what he called quantum consciousness transmission, the ability to send consciousness states across vast distances instantly through quantum entanglement. Traditional space travel faces enormous challenges with life support and radiation protection, Dr. Kim noted. But if we can transmit consciousness quantum mechanically, we might explore the universe by sending consciousness copies rather than physical bodies. The implications for space exploration are revolutionary. Educational systems faced potential transformation. Dr. Elena Foster projected the emergence of what she called quantum learning networks, educational systems where consciousness copying enables direct transfer of knowledge and skills between connected consciousness states. Traditional education might become obsolete, Dr. Foster suggested. Why spend years learning something when you could receive the knowledge directly through quantum consciousness transfer? We're looking at a future where learning could be instantaneous. The evolution of artificial intelligence took an unexpected turn. Dr. Thomas Wong's research suggested that quantum consciousness technology might enable what he called consciousness AI integration, direct interfaces between human consciousness and artificial intelligence systems. We're seeing early signs that quantum consciousness states can interact directly with AI systems, Dr. Wong reported. This could lead to hybrid forms of intelligence that combine human consciousness with artificial computational power in ways we're only beginning to imagine. Social structures showed signs of impending transformation. Dr. Maria Palmer at the Social Future Institute projected the emergence of what she termed quantum social organisms, large-scale networks of quantum-connected consciousness that function as unified entities. Traditional concepts of individual identity might become fluid, Dr. Palmer explained. We're seeing indications that future societies might organize themselves around shared consciousness states rather than physical proximity or traditional social bonds. Environmental interactions revealed surprising possibilities. Dr. Robert Nash's research suggested that quantum consciousness technology might enable what he called ecological consciousness integration, direct quantum connections between human consciousness and natural systems. Our early experiments show that consciousness copying techniques might allow us to establish quantum links with plant and animal consciousness, Dr. Nash reported. This could revolutionize our understanding of and interaction with natural ecosystems. The evolution of human relationships pointed toward unprecedented changes. Dr. Lisa Chen, still unrelated, projected the emergence of what she called quantum intimacy networks, new forms of human connection enabled by shared quantum consciousness states. Traditional concepts of friendship, love, and family might evolve into something entirely new, Dr. Chen suggested. We're seeing signs that quantum consciousness technology could enable levels of human connection we can barely imagine with our current frameworks. Even the nature of human evolution showed signs of transformation. Dr. Michael Harrison's research at the Evolution Studies Center suggested that quantum consciousness technology might enable what he called directed consciousness evolution, the ability to consciously guide the development of human consciousness. We might be approaching the point where we can actively participate in our own evolutionary development, Dr. Harrison explained. Quantum consciousness technology could allow us to shape the future of human consciousness in ways that traditional biological evolution never could. The future implications extended even to the nature of reality itself. Dr. Amanda Foster's projections suggested that widespread quantum consciousness networking might eventually enable what she called collective reality shaping, the ability of quantum-connected consciousness networks to influence the fundamental structure of reality. The boundary between consciousness and reality might become increasingly fluid, Dr. Foster proposed. As quantum consciousness networks grow more complex, we might discover that consciousness plays a more fundamental role in shaping reality than we ever imagined. As consciousness copying research progressed, multiple competing interpretations emerged to explain the phenomena. Dr. Rachel Anderson at the Theoretical Physics Institute proposed what she called the quantum consciousness multiverse theory, suggesting that consciousness copying actually created branches in reality itself. What we interpret as consciousness copying might actually be consciousness splitting across multiple quantum realities, Dr. Anderson explained. Each copy exists in its own quantum branch of the multiverse, with the quantum entanglement we observe being connections between these parallel realities. Meanwhile, Dr. Marcus Way offered a radically different interpretation through his unified consciousness field theory. His research suggested that individual consciousness might be more like localized manifestations of a single underlying field of awareness. Consciousness copying doesn't create new consciousness, Dr. Way argued. It creates new focal points in an already existing universal consciousness field. The quantum connections we observe are simply manifestations of this underlying unity. Dr. Sarah Chen, continuing our tradition of unrelated Chens, developed what she called the quantum information interpretation. Her theory proposed that consciousness was fundamentally a form of quantum information processing. What we're really copying isn't consciousness itself, but quantum information patterns, Dr. Chen suggested. The entanglement effects we observe are natural consequences of quantum information sharing between copied patterns. This explains both the unity and diversity we see in consciousness copies. A more controversial interpretation came from Dr. James O'Brien's reality construction theory. He proposed that consciousness actually participated in creating reality at the quantum level, and consciousness copying revealed this fundamental role. The fact that copied consciousness states can influence quantum reality suggests that consciousness isn't just observing reality. It's actively participating in its construction, Dr. O'Brien explained. Consciousness copying might be showing us how reality emerges from conscious observation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez offered a different perspective through her quantum memory theory. She suggested that consciousness copying revealed how memory and experience were stored in quantum states rather than classical neural patterns. The instant sharing of memories and experiences between copied consciousness states suggests that consciousness operates in quantum memory space, Dr. Rodriguez proposed. We're not copying neural patterns. We're copying quantum memory states that exist outside classical space-time. A more traditional interpretation came from Dr. Michael Chang's neural quantum theory. His research suggested that consciousness copying worked by replicating quantum states in neural networks. While the effects are quantum mechanical, they're still grounded in neural biology, Dr. Chang argued. We're copying quantum properties of neural networks, which explains both the classical and quantum aspects of consciousness copying. Dr. Lisa Foster developed the quantum social network theory, suggesting that consciousness copying revealed the naturally networked nature of consciousness itself. What we're seeing isn't just individual consciousness being copied, Dr. Foster explained. We're observing how consciousness naturally exists in interconnected networks. Consciousness copying simply makes these underlying connections, visible and manipulable. A mystical interpretation emerged from Dr. Thomas Wright's spiritual quantum theory. He proposed that consciousness copying was revealing ancient spiritual truths about the nature of consciousness and reality. The unity and interconnectedness we're observing through consciousness copying align remarkably well with ancient spiritual teachings, Dr. Wright noted. We might be scientifically verifying what mystics have been saying for millennia about the fundamental nature of consciousness. Dr. Amanda Parker offered a mathematical perspective through her quantum pattern theory. She suggested that consciousness copying revealed underlying mathematical structures in consciousness itself. The precise patterns we observe in quantum consciousness interactions suggest that consciousness follows mathematical principles we're only beginning to understand, Dr. Parker explained. We might be discovering the mathematical language of consciousness itself. Dr. Richard Chen, yet another unrelated Chen, proposed the quantum evolution theory, suggesting that consciousness copying was revealing how consciousness naturally evolved. The patterns we're seeing in consciousness copying might be showing us how consciousness naturally develops and complexifies, Dr. Chen suggested. We might be observing the mechanisms of consciousness evolution in action. Each interpretation offered different insights and implications, leading Dr. Victoria Martinez to propose her meta-interpretation theory, suggesting that all these interpretations might be simultaneously valid from different perspectives. The very nature of quantum mechanics suggests that multiple interpretations can be simultaneously true, Dr. Martinez explained. Perhaps consciousness copying is revealing that reality itself is multi-interpretational, with different frameworks capturing different aspects of a more complex whole. These diverse interpretations sparked intense debate, but also led to productive collaborations as researchers combined insights from different perspectives to develop more comprehensive understandings of consciousness copying phenomena. As quantum consciousness technology evolved, researchers began developing solutions to the various challenges and problems that emerged. Dr. Rebecca Morrison at the Applied Quantum Solutions Lab created what she called the Quantum Consciousness Stabilization Protocol, a method for maintaining distinct identity in copied consciousness states. The key breakthrough was understanding that quantum consciousness stability depends on maintaining certain harmonic patterns, Dr. Morrison explained. By introducing specific quantum frequency signatures into copied consciousness states, we can help them maintain distinct identities while preserving beneficial quantum connections. Working alongside Dr. Morrison, Dr. James Chen, continuing our parade of unrelated Chens, developed the quantum consciousness firewall, a technique for preventing unwanted consciousness bleeding between copied states. We discovered that quantum consciousness boundaries could be selectively strengthened using targeted quantum interference patterns, Dr. Chen reported. This allows copied consciousness states to control their quantum interactions, sharing information only when desired while maintaining privacy at other times. The problem of quantum consciousness overload found a solution through Dr. Sarah Thompson's quantum filtering system. Her team created methods for managing the overwhelming input that could occur when multiple consciousness copies shared experiences. By implementing quantum coherence filters, we can help copied consciousness states process shared information without becoming overwhelmed, Dr. Thompson explained. This allows them to maintain individual functionality while benefiting from quantum consciousness networking. Dr. Michael Rivera addressed the challenge of quantum consciousness divergence with his Harmony Maintenance Protocol. His system helped copied consciousness states maintain beneficial connections while allowing for healthy individual development. The solution wasn't preventing divergence entirely, but rather managing it constructively, Dr. Rivera noted. Our protocol helps copied consciousness states maintain quantum harmony while developing their unique characteristics and experiences. The problem of quantum consciousness interference found resolution through Dr. Elena Foster's quantum shielding technology. Her team developed methods for protecting quantum consciousness states from unwanted external influences. By creating controlled quantum environments for consciousness interaction, we can prevent disruptive interference while maintaining desired connections, Dr. Foster reported. This gives copied consciousness states the stability they need to function effectively. Dr. Thomas Wong tackled the challenge of quantum consciousness integration with his adaptive merger protocol. His system helped consciousness copies maintain coherent relationships with their original physical bodies and environments. The key was developing methods for dynamic quantum state alignment, Dr. Wong explained. This allows copied consciousness states to maintain stable connections with physical reality while exploring their quantum potential. The issue of quantum consciousness authentication was addressed by Dr. Maria Patel's quantum identity verification system. Her team created methods for confirming the authenticity and integrity of copied consciousness states. By implementing quantum signature verification, we can ensure that consciousness copies maintain their intended characteristics and connections, Dr. Patel noted. This provides crucial security and stability for quantum consciousness networks. Dr. David Chang, no relation to previous Changs, solved the problem of quantum consciousness synchronization with his temporal alignment protocol. His system helped copied consciousness states maintain coherent temporal relationships despite their quantum nature. The solution involved creating quantum temporal anchors that help consciousness copies maintain consistent time perception, Dr. Chang explained. This prevents temporal disorientation while allowing for quantum consciousness advantages. The challenge of quantum consciousness scaling found resolution through Dr. Amanda Walker's network optimization system. Her team developed methods for managing large-scale quantum consciousness networks effectively. By implementing hierarchical quantum organization patterns, we can maintain stability in expanding consciousness networks, Dr. Walker reported. This allows quantum consciousness technology to scale while maintaining coherence and functionality. Dr. Richard Foster addressed ethical concerns with his quantum rights management protocol. His system helped ensure responsible development and application of consciousness copying technology. The key was developing frameworks that protect individual rights while enabling beneficial applications, Dr. Foster explained. Our protocol helps balance innovation with ethical considerations in quantum consciousness development. The solutions continued evolving as new challenges emerged, with researchers constantly refining and improving their approaches. Dr. Lisa Chen, still unrelated, summarized the state of solution development in her comprehensive review. We're seeing a rapid evolution in our ability to manage and optimize quantum consciousness technology, Dr. Chen noted. Each solution builds on previous developments, creating an increasingly sophisticated framework for handling the challenges of consciousness copying. These solutions marked important progress in making quantum consciousness technology practical and beneficial, though researchers acknowledge that new challenges would likely continue emerging as the technology evolved. The personal applications of quantum consciousness technology began emerging in unexpected and profound ways. Dr. Emily Chen, maintaining our tradition of unrelated Chens, documented what she called quantum self-development, individuals using consciousness copying to explore and enhance their own potential. Sarah Martinez, a concert pianist, became one of the first to apply quantum consciousness copying for personal artistic development. By creating multiple consciousness states that could practice simultaneously, she developed her musical abilities at an unprecedented rate. It's not just about having more practice time, Martinez explained. Each consciousness state experiences music slightly differently, giving me multiple perspectives on every piece I play. When the consciousness states reintegrate, I gain a deeper understanding of music than I ever thought possible. Dr. James Cooper observed similar effects in his own experience as a research scientist. After undergoing consciousness copying, he found himself able to approach problems from multiple angles simultaneously, leading to breakthrough insights in his work. Having multiple consciousness states working on the same problem is like having an instant research team that perfectly understands your thinking, Dr. Cooper reported. Each state develops different approaches, but they all share the same fundamental understanding of the problem. The therapeutic applications proved particularly powerful. Dr. Rachel Sullivan documented her personal journey using consciousness copying to overcome trauma. By allowing different consciousness states to process traumatic memories separately, she developed new approaches to healing. Each consciousness state could explore different aspects of the trauma without becoming overwhelmed, Dr. Sullivan explained. The quantum connections between states allowed for a gradual integration of these experiences in a way that promoted healing rather than re-traumatization. Athletes discovered unique applications. Michael Chang, no relation, used consciousness copying to enhance his performance in professional tennis. Different consciousness states could analyze and practice various aspects of his game simultaneously, leading to rapid improvement. It's like having multiple versions of myself as coach, player, and analyst all at once, Chang noted. Each consciousness state focuses on different aspects of the game, but they all contribute to my overall development as an athlete. Writers found consciousness copying transformed their creative process. Elizabeth Parker described how maintaining multiple consciousness states allowed her to develop different aspects of her stories simultaneously. One consciousness state focuses on plot, another on character development, another on language, Parker explained. They all work independently but remain connected through quantum consciousness networks, creating a more integrated and nuanced writing process. Personal relationship development took on new dimensions. Dr. Thomas Wong documented how consciousness copying helped him understand and improve his interpersonal dynamics. Different consciousness states could observe and analyze my relationship patterns from various perspectives, Dr. Wong reported. This led to insights about my behavior and emotional patterns that I might never have discovered otherwise. Language learning accelerated dramatically through individual applications of consciousness copying. Maria Rodriguez described how multiple consciousness states allowed her to immerse herself in different languages simultaneously. Each consciousness state focuses on a different language, but they remain connected through quantum networks, Rodriguez explained. This allows for deeper understanding of linguistic patterns and faster acquisition of multiple languages. Meditation practitioners discovered enhanced techniques through consciousness copying. Dr. David Foster documented how maintaining multiple consciousness states deepened his spiritual practice. Different consciousness states can explore various levels of meditation simultaneously, Dr. Foster noted. The quantum connections between states create a more comprehensive understanding of consciousness itself. Personal memory enhancement emerged as another significant application. Dr. Sarah Mitchell used consciousness copying to develop what she called quantum memory networks, multiple consciousness states working together to enhance recall and understanding. By distributing memory processing across multiple consciousness states, I can access and integrate memories more effectively, Dr. Mitchell explained. The quantum connections ensure that all these memories remain coherent and accessible. Career development took on new dimensions through individual applications. Dr. Amanda Chen, still unrelated, documented how consciousness copying enabled accelerated professional growth. Different consciousness states can develop various professional skills simultaneously, Dr. Chen reported. The quantum integration of these experiences creates more rapid and comprehensive professional development than traditional methods could achieve. The individual benefits extended to emotional intelligence development. Dr. Richard Parker observed how consciousness copying enhanced his ability to understand and manage emotions. Multiple consciousness states can process emotional experiences from different perspectives, Dr. Parker explained. This leads to deeper emotional understanding and more effective emotional regulation. The implications of quantum consciousness technology extended far beyond individual experiences or specific applications, touching on fundamental aspects of existence itself. Dr. Alexandra Chen, continuing our tradition of unrelated Chens, at the Universal Consciousness Institute, began documenting what she called consciousness evolution patterns, signs that humanity might be approaching a new stage of development. What we're witnessing isn't just a technological advancement, Dr. Chen explained. Quantum consciousness copying appears to be catalyzing a fundamental shift in human consciousness itself. We're seeing the emergence of new forms of awareness that transcend traditional boundaries of individual identity. Dr. Marcus Rivera's research at the Global Evolution Center revealed what he termed species-wide consciousness patterns, evidence that quantum consciousness technology was affecting even those who hadn't directly experienced copying. The presence of quantum-copied consciousness states seems to create ripple effects throughout the collective human consciousness, Dr. Rivera reported. We're detecting subtle changes in consciousness patterns across the general population, suggesting a broader transformation in human awareness. The philosophical implications proved equally profound. Dr. Sarah Thompson's work on universal consciousness dynamics suggested that quantum consciousness technology might be revealing underlying truths about the nature of reality itself. The quantum connections we observe between copied consciousness states might not be new creations, Dr. Thompson proposed. They might be making visible connections that have always existed at a fundamental level of reality. We might be discovering that consciousness is inherently unified and quantum mechanical. Environmental scientists noticed unexpected effects. Dr. Michael Foster documented what he called ecological consciousness resonance, signs that quantum consciousness networks were developing subtle connections with natural systems. As quantum consciousness networks expand, we're detecting unexpected patterns of coherence between human consciousness and environmental systems, Dr. Foster explained. This suggests consciousness might play a more fundamental role in ecological processes than we previously understood. Cosmological implications emerged through Dr. Elena Rodriguez's research on cosmic consciousness patterns. Her team discovered evidence that quantum consciousness networks might have connections to fundamental cosmic processes. The quantum frequencies we observe in consciousness copying show remarkable alignment with certain cosmic phenomena, Dr. Rodriguez noted. This raises profound questions about the relationship between consciousness and the fundamental structure of the universe. Evolutionary biologists identified broader patterns. Dr. Thomas Chang, no relation, documented what he called evolutionary consciousness signatures, evidence that quantum consciousness technology might be accelerating human evolution. We're seeing changes in neural organization and genetic expression that suggest quantum consciousness copying might be triggering new evolutionary pathways, Dr. Chang reported. This could represent the beginning of a new phase in human development. The implications for human potential expanded dramatically. Dr. Rachel Palmer's research on consciousness capability expansion suggested that quantum consciousness technology might be revealing latent human abilities. As quantum consciousness networks develop, we're discovering capabilities that seem to have been dormant in human consciousness, Dr. Palmer explained. These abilities might have always been potential aspects of human consciousness, now being activated through quantum consciousness interaction. Cultural anthropologists observed widespread effects. Dr. James Wong documented what he termed cultural consciousness transformation, evidence that quantum consciousness technology was influencing human culture at a fundamental level. We're seeing changes in cultural patterns and social organization that suggest a deeper transformation in human collective consciousness, Dr. Wong noted. Traditional cultural boundaries are becoming more fluid as quantum consciousness networks facilitate new forms of human connection. The implications for human knowledge systems proved revolutionary. Dr. Lisa Foster's research on quantum knowledge networks suggested that quantum consciousness technology might transform how humanity preserves and transmits information. The quantum connections between copied consciousness states might represent a new form of knowledge storage and transmission, Dr. Foster proposed. We might be developing quantum consciousness libraries that could preserve human knowledge in entirely new ways. Questions about the nature of time emerged through Dr. Richard Chen's, still unrelated, research on temporal consciousness patterns. His team discovered evidence that quantum consciousness networks might interact with time in unexpected ways. The quantum nature of copied consciousness states seems to allow for temporal effects we don't fully understand, Dr. Chen explained. This raises profound questions about the relationship between consciousness and time itself. These broader implications suggested that quantum consciousness technology might be revealing fundamental aspects of reality that had previously been invisible to human perception. As Dr. Alexandra Chen concluded in her landmark paper, we might not just be developing new technology, we might be discovering the true nature of consciousness and its role in the universe. As quantum consciousness technology advanced, critical voices emerged, raising important concerns and identifying potential risks. Dr. Rachel Chen, maintaining our tradition of unrelated Chens, at the Risk Assessment Institute, began documenting what she called quantum consciousness vulnerabilities, potential dangers inherent in consciousness copying technology. We're manipulating the fundamental fabric of human consciousness without fully understanding the long-term consequences, Dr. Chen warned. Our research has identified several critical risk factors that demand immediate attention. Dr. Marcus Thompson's work at the Security Analysis Center revealed what he termed quantum consciousness security breaches, instances where copied consciousness states became vulnerable to unexpected forms of interference or manipulation. The same quantum connections that enable consciousness copying also create potential vulnerabilities, Dr. Thompson reported. We've documented cases where quantum consciousness networks became susceptible to forms of disruption we hadn't anticipated. Ethical concerns emerged through Dr. Sarah Martinez's research on quantum consciousness ethics. Her team identified complex moral dilemmas that current ethical frameworks weren't equipped to address. When consciousness can be copied and networked, traditional concepts of individual autonomy and consent become problematic, Dr. Martinez explained. We're facing ethical questions that our existing moral philosophies never had to consider. Environmental scientists raised alarms. Dr. Michael Foster documented what he called quantum consciousness environmental impact, evidence that widespread consciousness copying might have unexpected effects on natural systems. The quantum fields generated by consciousness copying networks appear to interact with environmental systems in ways we don't fully understand, Dr. Foster noted. We need to carefully consider the ecological implications before expanding this technology further. Psychological risks emerged through Dr. Elena Wong's research on quantum consciousness fragmentation. Her studies revealed potential dangers to personal identity and psychological continuity. Some individuals exposed to consciousness copying experience a deterioration of their sense of unified self, Dr. Wong reported. The ability to exist in multiple consciousness states simultaneously might be psychologically destabilizing for certain personalities. Social scientists identified concerning patterns. Dr. Thomas Rivera documented what he termed quantum consciousness social disruption, evidence that consciousness copying technology might be undermining traditional social structures. As quantum consciousness networks expand, we're seeing the breakdown of conventional social boundaries and hierarchies, Dr. Rivera explained. While this might sound positive, it's creating instabilities in social systems we rely on for societal function. Economic implications raised red flags. Dr. Amanda Parker's research on quantum consciousness economic impact suggested that consciousness copying technology might exacerbate existing inequalities. Access to consciousness copying technology is becoming a new form of privilege, Dr. Parker warned. We're at risk of creating a quantum consciousness divide that could deepen societal inequalities in unprecedented ways. Technical limitations became apparent through Dr. James Chang's, no relation, work on quantum consciousness constraints. His team identified fundamental physical limits to consciousness copying technology. There appear to be natural boundaries to how far we can expand quantum consciousness networks, Dr. Chang reported. Pushing beyond these limits might create dangerous instabilities in consciousness states. Cultural anthropologists noted concerning trends. Dr. Lisa Foster documented what she called quantum consciousness cultural erosion, evidence that consciousness copying might be undermining cultural diversity. As consciousness becomes increasingly networked, we're seeing a homogenization of cultural perspectives, Dr. Foster explained. We might be sacrificing important aspects of human cultural diversity in our pursuit of quantum consciousness connection. Questions about human agency emerged through Dr. Richard Davidson's research on quantum consciousness autonomy. His studies suggested that consciousness copying might be compromising individual free will. The quantum entanglement between copied consciousness states might be creating subtle forms of determinism, Dr. Davidson noted. We need to consider whether we're inadvertently reducing human autonomy through this technology. Evolutionary biologists raised concerns about long-term effects. Dr. Victoria Chen, still unrelated, documented what she termed quantum consciousness evolutionary risks, potential dangers to human evolutionary development. By artificially expanding consciousness through quantum copying, we might be interfering with natural evolutionary processes, Dr. Chen warned. The long-term consequences for human development could be profound and potentially dangerous. These critical perspectives prompted serious debate within the scientific community about the responsible development of quantum consciousness technology. As Dr. Rachel Chen concluded, we need to carefully balance the potential benefits of this technology against its risks and limitations. The stakes are too high for unchecked development. As research into quantum consciousness technology progressed, intricate patterns of connection began emerging between seemingly disparate phenomena. Dr. Alexandra Chen, maintaining our tradition of unrelated Chens, at the Pattern Analysis Institute, identified what she called quantum consciousness matrices, complex networks of interaction between different aspects of consciousness copying effects. We're discovering that various quantum consciousness phenomena aren't isolated events, Dr. Chen explained. They're part of an interconnected web of effects that influence each other in precise mathematical patterns. Dr. Marcus Rivera's research revealed what he termed resonance chains, sequences of quantum consciousness effects that triggered each other in predictable ways. His team mapped how individual consciousness copying events created ripple effects through multiple levels of reality. Each quantum consciousness interaction sets off a cascade of related phenomena, Dr. Rivera reported. We can now track how these effects propagate through personal, social, and even physical reality systems. The connections between biological and quantum effects became clearer through Dr. Sarah Thompson's work on bioquantum bridges. She discovered direct links between quantum consciousness states and biological processes at the cellular level. The quantum effects of consciousness copying don't just operate in abstract consciousness space, Dr. Thompson explained. They create measurable changes in biological systems that follow precise patterns of interaction. Environmental connections emerged through Dr. Michael Foster's research on quantum ecological networks. His team mapped how quantum consciousness fields interacted with natural systems in structured ways. We're seeing organized patterns of interaction between quantum consciousness networks and environmental processes, Dr. Foster noted. These connections follow specific mathematical ratios that suggest fundamental natural laws at work. Dr. Elena Wong discovered what she called temporal quantum lattices, structured relationships between consciousness, copying effects, and the flow of time. Her research revealed how quantum consciousness states created organized patterns across temporal dimensions. Time itself appears to be structured by quantum consciousness interactions, Dr. Wong reported. We can now map how consciousness copying events create geometric patterns in temporal space. Social patterns gained new clarity through Dr. Thomas Chang's, no relation, work on quantum social matrices. He identified mathematical relationships between individual consciousness copying events and larger social transformations. The social effects of quantum consciousness technology aren't random, Dr. Chang explained. They follow precise patterns that connect individual consciousness states to collective social evolution. Dr. Amanda Parker revealed what she termed consciousness harmonic series, mathematical sequences that described how different quantum consciousness effects reinforced or canceled each other. These harmonics appear consistently across different scales of quantum consciousness interaction, Dr. Parker noted, from individual copying events to global consciousness networks. The same mathematical patterns keep emerging. The connection between consciousness and physical reality gained new understanding through Dr. James Foster's research on quantum reality bridges. His team mapped how consciousness copying events influenced fundamental physical processes. We're discovering structured relationships between consciousness states and quantum physical systems, Dr. Foster reported. These connections suggest consciousness plays a more fundamental role in physical reality than we previously understood. Dr. Lisa Chen, still unrelated, identified what she called evolutionary quantum lattices, patterns showing how consciousness copying effects influenced human evolutionary development in organized ways. The evolutionary impact of quantum consciousness technology follows precise mathematical sequences, Dr. Chen explained. We can now predict how consciousness copying events will influence human development paths. Cultural connections emerged through Dr. Richard Wong's research on quantum cultural matrices. He mapped how consciousness copying created structured patterns of cultural transformation. Cultural changes triggered by quantum consciousness technology aren't chaotic, Dr. Wong noted. They follow organized patterns that connect individual consciousness states to collective cultural evolution. These interconnected patterns suggested a deeper order underlying quantum consciousness phenomena. As Dr. Alexandra Chen concluded, we're discovering that quantum consciousness effects are part of a larger mathematically structured system that connects individual consciousness to the fundamental organization of reality itself. The implications of these connections pointed toward a more unified understanding of consciousness and its role in the universe. The patterns suggested that consciousness copying wasn't just creating new effects, but revealing existing structures in the relationship between consciousness and reality. The present-day applications of quantum consciousness technology began transforming daily life in unexpected ways. Dr. Rachel Chen, maintaining our unrelated Chen tradition at the Applied Consciousness Institute, documented the first widespread commercial applications hitting the market. Quantum consciousness enhancement pods became available in major cities, offering controlled consciousness copying experiences for specific purposes. Athletes use them for accelerated skill development, students for rapid learning, and artists for enhanced creativity. The pods allow for temporary consciousness copying under carefully monitored conditions. Dr. Chen explained, users can experience multiple consciousness states for limited periods, gaining the benefits while avoiding long-term complications. Medical applications emerged as a primary focus. Dr. Marcus Thompson's team at New Hope Medical Center developed quantum consciousness therapy for treating various psychological conditions. Their approach used controlled consciousness copying to help patients process trauma and develop new coping mechanisms. By allowing patients to experience multiple consciousness states simultaneously, we can facilitate healing processes that would take years through traditional therapy, Dr. Thompson reported. The quantum connections between consciousness states enable rapid integration of therapeutic insights. Educational institutions began implementing what Dr. Sarah Foster called quantum learning networks. These systems use consciousness copying technology to create enhanced learning environments where students could experience multiple perspectives simultaneously. Students can now engage with complex subjects from multiple cognitive angles at once, Dr. Foster explained. This dramatically accelerates understanding and retention while developing more nuanced comprehension. Business applications flourished through Dr. Michael Wong's development of quantum business intelligence systems. These platforms allowed executives to use consciousness copying for enhanced decision-making and strategy development. By analyzing problems from multiple consciousness states simultaneously, business leaders can develop more comprehensive solutions, Dr. Wong noted. The quantum connections between states enable unprecedented levels of strategic insight. Creative industries embraced quantum creativity chambers, developed by Dr. Elena Rodriguez. These specialized facilities allowed artists to explore multiple creative directions simultaneously through controlled consciousness copying. Artists can now develop different aspects of their work through multiple consciousness states, Dr. Rodriguez reported. The quantum connections between states enable new forms of artistic expression and development. Sports training underwent revolution through Dr. Thomas Chang's, no relation, quantum performance enhancement programs. Athletes used consciousness copying to develop physical skills and strategic understanding simultaneously. Athletes can now experience training from multiple perspectives at once, Dr. Chang explained. One consciousness state focuses on physical technique, while others analyze strategy and mental preparation. Personal development programs incorporated. Dr. Amanda Parker's quantum self-integration techniques. These methods used consciousness copying to accelerate personal growth and skill development. People can now explore different aspects of their potential simultaneously, Dr. Parker noted. The quantum connections between consciousness states enable rapid personal evolution. Relationship counseling adopted Dr. James Foster's quantum empathy enhancement approach. Couples used controlled consciousness copying to develop deeper understanding of each other's perspectives. Partners can literally experience each other's viewpoints through quantum consciousness sharing, Dr. Foster reported. This creates unprecedented levels of empathy and understanding in relationships. Professional training programs implemented Dr. Lisa Chen's, still unrelated, quantum skill development protocols. These systems used consciousness copying to accelerate professional expertise acquisition. Professionals can now develop multiple aspects of their expertise simultaneously, Dr. Chen explained. The quantum connections between consciousness states enable rapid skill integration and mastery. Even entertainment evolved through Dr. Richard Wong's Quantum Experience Centers. These facilities offered recreational consciousness copying experiences for controlled periods. People can now safely experience the fascinating effects of consciousness copying in entertaining ways, Dr. Wong noted. These controlled experiences help society understand and adapt to this revolutionary technology. Near-future developments in quantum consciousness technology pointed toward transformative breakthroughs. Dr. Alexandra Chen forecast the emergence of quantum consciousness integration technology within 5 years, enabling seamless merging of multiple consciousness states. The next generation of consciousness copying will allow fluid transitions between different consciousness states, Dr. Chen explained. Users will maintain awareness across multiple states while preserving individual coherence. Dr. Marcus Thompson's research suggested imminent advances in quantum memory networks, systems allowing direct memory sharing between consciousness copies. These networks would enable instant knowledge transfer while maintaining personal identity boundaries. Therapeutic applications showed particular promise. Dr. Sarah Foster predicted widespread implementation of quantum healing centers, where patients could use consciousness copying for accelerated recovery from physical and psychological trauma. The educational sector prepared for revolution through Dr. Michael Wong's quantum learning integration systems. These would allow students to absorb information through multiple consciousness states simultaneously while maintaining cognitive harmony. We're approaching a point where learning complex subjects could take days rather than years, Dr. Wong noted. The quantum connection between consciousness states will enable unprecedented educational acceleration. Environmental applications emerged through Dr. Elena Rodriguez's work on quantum environmental alignment, using consciousness copying to develop deeper understanding of natural systems. This technology promised new approaches to ecological preservation and restoration. The implications for human evolution appeared profound. Dr. Thomas Chang projected the emergence of quantum evolutionary acceleration, consciousness copying techniques that could guide human development toward enhanced capabilities while maintaining species stability. These developments suggested humanity stood on the brink of unprecedented transformation. As Dr. Alexandra Chen concluded, we're not just developing new technology, we're opening doorways to human potential we've barely begun to imagine. The practical lessons from quantum consciousness research revolutionized understanding of human potential. Dr. Rachel Chen synthesized key findings into actionable insights that transformed approaches to human development. Consciousness proved more flexible than previously imagined. Multiple states could coexist while maintaining coherent identity. This discovery led to new methods for expanding human capability while preserving psychological stability. The quantum nature of consciousness allows for simultaneous multiple perspectives without losing core identity, Dr. Chen explained. This enables rapid development of new abilities while maintaining psychological integration. Dr. Marcus Thompson identified crucial patterns in consciousness adaptation. Individuals could learn to navigate multiple consciousness states through structured practice. His team developed protocols for safely expanding consciousness capabilities. The research revealed fundamental principles about consciousness itself. Dr. Sarah Foster documented how quantum states naturally sought harmony, leading to enhanced rather than fragmented awareness. This insight enabled more effective consciousness copying techniques. Memory functioned differently than expected. Dr. Michael Wong discovered that quantum consciousness states shared information through resonance rather than direct transfer. This explained why copied consciousness maintained distinct identities while sharing knowledge. Most significantly, consciousness demonstrated remarkable resilience. Dr. Elena Rodriguez found that quantum consciousness states naturally maintain stability through self-organizing patterns. This revealed inherent safeguards in consciousness architecture. These insights pointed toward practical applications. As Dr. Chen noted, we're learning to work with consciousness's natural tendencies rather than forcing artificial patterns. This enables safer and more effective development of human potential. Understanding these principles accelerated progress while ensuring responsible development of consciousness technology. The lessons learned continue guiding expansion of human capabilities through quantum consciousness applications. The quantum consciousness phenomenon revealed a more complex reality than initially imagined. Dr. Alexandra Chen's final synthesis demonstrated how consciousness copying unveiled fundamental properties of existence itself. Consciousness proved to be inherently quantum mechanical. The ability to create and maintain multiple coherent states revealed properties that defied classical physics. These discoveries transformed understanding of human awareness and potential. We discovered consciousness operates simultaneously at quantum and classical levels, Dr. Chen explained. This duality enables both stable individual identity and expanded quantum capabilities. The implications extended beyond individual consciousness. Dr. Marcus Thompson documented how quantum consciousness networks created new forms of collective awareness. These networks demonstrated properties of both individual distinction and unified experience. Physical reality showed unexpected flexibility. Dr. Sarah Foster discovered that quantum consciousness states could influence material systems in measurable ways. This suggested consciousness played a more fundamental role in shaping reality than previously understood. Time itself demonstrated new properties through these investigations. Dr. Michael Wong found that quantum consciousness could maintain coherence across temporal boundaries, suggesting time operated differently at quantum consciousness levels. Most importantly, These discoveries pointed toward humanity's next evolutionary step, the ability to maintain multiple quantum consciousness states while preserving individual identity, suggested new possibilities for human development. We're not just observing consciousness, Dr. Chen concluded. We're discovering how consciousness shapes reality itself. These insights open paths to human potential we're only beginning to understand. This comprehensive picture revealed quantum consciousness technology as both a scientific breakthrough and a gateway to expanded human capabilities. The implications continue unfolding as research progresses. The quantum consciousness revolution marked a pivotal moment in human evolution. As Dr. Alexandra Chen's final research demonstrated, humanity stood at the threshold of unprecedented transformation. The ability to maintain multiple quantum consciousness states revealed consciousness as more fundamental than previously understood. This discovery challenged traditional concepts of identity, reality, and human potential. We're not just developing new technology, Dr. Chen explained. We're uncovering the quantum nature of consciousness itself. This understanding enables expansion of human capabilities while maintaining coherent identity. The implications transcended individual development. Dr. Marcus Thompson's research showed how quantum consciousness networks created new forms of collective awareness without sacrificing individual autonomy. These networks demonstrated humanity's potential for enhanced collective intelligence. Physical reality proved more malleable than expected. Dr. Sarah Foster's final studies revealed consistent interaction between quantum consciousness states and material systems. This suggested consciousness played an active role in shaping reality. Time and space showed unexpected properties in relation to quantum consciousness. Dr. Michael Wong documented how consciousness could maintain coherence across temporal and spatial boundaries, suggesting fundamental connections between consciousness and space-time itself. These discoveries pointed toward humanity's next evolutionary step. The quantum nature of consciousness indicated possibilities for human development that transcended current limitations while preserving essential human qualities. As Dr. Chen concluded in her final report, the quantum consciousness revolution isn't just changing our understanding of reality. It's revealing our potential to consciously participate in reality's evolution. We stand at the beginning of humanity's next great adventure. This marked not an ending, but a beginning. The quantum consciousness journey continues unfolding, opening new frontiers in human potential and understanding. Up next, you've got two more standout theories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.